Good evening, everybody. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 12, 2023. The notice was on that date posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the town of Westfield. Ms. Lawshie, may I have a roll call?
Mayor Brindle?
Here.
Council members Hapgood?
Here.
Dardia?
Here.
Domagala?
Here.
Kiefer?
Here.
Saunders?
Here.
Armento?
Here.
Contract? Here. Healy?
Here.
Please rise for the invocation, which will be given on the councilman contract, and then remain standing for the salute to the flag.
As we begin this meeting, let us take a moment to appreciate the privilege and responsibility we have been given to serve our community. Let us seek the highest ideals of honesty, integrity, and compassion in our interactions and decisions. May our differences inspire dialogue rather than division, and may our shared goals unite us in purpose. Let us move forward with open hearts and minds, committing to the well-being of all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jim?
Just a couple of quick updates for everybody. Road paving, even though it's November, continues. We had Elizabethtown Gas is still trying to get some of the work done before year end. So they just, last Thursday, Friday, when the public schools were closed, they were able to mill and pave Trinity Place, Waterson Street, and a good section of Broadway, which they were required to pave due to some infrastructure work there. The striping of those streets will be actually redone, I believe, this Friday. And they're currently working on a grid in Ward number 2, completing the second half of a grid they worked on at the beginning of the year, including streets like Benson, Harding, St. Mark's, a few others over there. They're hoping that, and the weather looks to be good, so they should get that grid finished in the next 2 weeks as well. So that'll then complete paving for this year, and then we'll look to move to next year. One last thing about paving, we are taking bids on Thursday for one of our 2 state aid jobs, the Clover and Francis Terrace job. If bids come in well and we have a successful bidder, we will look to award a contract for paving at next meeting, December 3rd. And the weather holds, that might be able to be done this year. Worst case will be transferred to the spring of 25. So that's road paving. Leaf collection continues. Leaves are falling fast. It's a lack of rain. Leaves are falling faster than normal. We did start earlier than normal, and the guys are moving along very well. The crews are moving along great. So again, stay in touch with the nixles, get the leaves out there, move your cars when you get a nixle for your street or area, and try to avoid putting mums, sticks, branches, and pumpkins in the leaf piles. If we go to remove or take those to the Union County Center, we'll be denied dropping off the leaves. So we don't want contaminated piles. And then lastly, Memorial Park Playground, for those of you that are in that area over there, taking longer than we expected. We've had a couple pieces of equipment that had to be reordered. Good news though, we're going to see some progress next week. The poured in place surface will be poured next week, and the fence will be right behind it. And then the equipment that we need to be installed that has not come in yet is being shipped out at the end of the month, and that'll be installed, but that does not affect the poured in place surface. So hopefully a matter of weeks away before we can actually finalize that project. There's some other pieces of the project too. Some new sidewalk has to be poured, and some of the fixing of the Memorial Park bathroom doors, but we're getting close to a finished product. So that's it.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Before we get started, unfortunately, it's the beginning of a very somber some news. I do want to take a moment to convey, on behalf of the entire Town Council, our deepest sympathy to the family of Brandon Genlot, a Westfield High School senior who was tragically killed last night in a car accident. We're grateful to the high school administration and counseling team for providing additional support services for students and staff, and our thoughts and prayers remain with Brandon's family and friends as they cope with this unimaginable loss. So can you all just join me in a moment of silence, please, to remember Brandon? Thank you. And apropos, we actually have a proclamation tonight for the incredible organization Imagine. who has actually been at the schools and working with families and students to provide them the grief counseling that they all need. So I'd like to bring up Lindsay Schembach from the Executive Director of Imagine while we read this proclamation. So this is in acknowledgement of National Children's Grief Awareness Month. Whereas National Month and Children's Grief Awareness Day were created to bring attention to the needs of children who are grieving and the benefits they obtain through the support of others. And whereas 1 in 13 children in New Jersey will experience the death of a parent or sibling by age 18. And whereas Imagine, a center for coping with loss, was incorporated in October 2011 by Mary Robinson and philanthropist Dr. Gerald Glasser, and now headed by Executive Director Lindsay Schembach. And whereas Imagine has provided a space in our community for children and families experiencing the death or life-altering illness of a loved one since March 2012. And whereas Imagine has furthered their mission from ensuring no child grieves alone to ensuring no one grieves alone by providing grief education and training for schools, community organizations, and businesses across the state of New Jersey and beyond. And whereas Governor Murphy signed into law the Grief Bill, S. 3330, on January 4th, allowing schools to teach children grades 8 through 12 about grief and loss and support structures to aid in the grieving process. And whereas recognizing that providing support for grieving children is essential for the future health and well-being of our children, our families, and society. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of Westfield recognizes November as National Children's Grief Awareness Month in partnership with Imagine, a Center for Coping with Loss, as part of our collective efforts to ensure no child grieves alone. And thank you for all you do, Lindsay. It's so important, so appropriate.
Statements for Brandon's family. Our hearts are with them and our organization is prepared to support them and everyone in our town. I always start with just saying so much gratitude to the town of Westfield that Imagine was born here. It was in living rooms across this town that you created this beautiful space, and that this space now serves 600 children and families from 85 different towns, all born from the work and the beautiful generosity of this group of people who know and understand what grieving children need. And I feel so honored and privileged to be able to be there, answer the phone, respond to schools, help leaders through these tragic, tragic moments that none of us ever want to imagine. So thank you so much for your commitment. Thank you to this town for continuing to support us. November 21st is Children's Grief Awareness Day. And Imagine is offering a free webinar to all, we have 250 people registered, and the title of the webinar is How to Talk to Children About Death and Dying. And so we welcome anyone who's interested just to join and be a part of this community. We're very grateful, so thank you so much.
So in other news, there's lots of new business happenings in town, and today Councilman Saunders and I joined Jim Gilday at the ribbon cutting ceremony for Apple Montessori School, which offers infant, toddler, preschool, kindergarten, summer camp programs, as well as certified outdoor classrooms for ages 6 weeks to 6 years old. And we've discovered today they are almost fully booked, even though they've actually been open for, I think, a little less than a month. They already have a waiting list for infants and toddlers, which speaks to the desperate need for reputable and reliable childcare options in our area. And Apple joins the relocated Alpha Fit Club in fully activating that space at the newly finished first phase of Westfield Crossing on South Avenue. And then on Saturday, and I have members of the Downtown Westfield Corporation here, I want to say thank you for all your work in supporting our businesses. We welcome the new owners of specialty soccer store Pegasus Sporting Goods at 317 South Avenue West, which is next door to Sherwin-Williams. And then tomorrow, We'll be cutting the ribbon for Lux Threads. It's located in the former Ruby and Jenna location at 206 East Broad Street. The women's clothing store opened by a local Westfield mom and former Saks buyer, which I love, with our local residents opening businesses. They'll offer high-end and affordable fashion for women of all ages. And soon, we'll be welcoming the Baked Bear, the San Diego-based ice cream sandwich shop, when they open their first North Jersey location in Westfield at the former Cinnaholic location on Elm Street. So there is a lot happening in Westfield. And I saw the sign for Sweetgreen is up in the former farmhouse location. We look forward to that opening early next year. Regarding next year, we have a lot of volunteer openings that we're searching to fill. So the annual open call for volunteers to fill upcoming vacancies on various boards, commissions, and committees will open later this week on our website. And I hope everyone will consider submitting an application for areas of interest. The talent and eagerness of our residents to volunteer are always Westfield's biggest assets, and we are really grateful for those who are willing to step up and devote their time and energy to benefit us all. I was speaking to the fire chief today, and he wants to remind us all that there is still a fire ban in place. The little bit of rain we got didn't even come close to addressing the significant drought that we're under. So there's an NJDEP fire ban on all public lands and private properties in all municipalities remains in place. The ban consists of all outdoor fires unless they are contained in an elevated stove using propane, natural gas, or electricity. No fire pits, no bonfires, no wood or charcoal fires allowed. Chief Delks told me today they are going to neighbors and putting out fire pits with a fire hose. Please don't make them do that. I think we all know how dry it is outside. It only takes a spark. So please just refrain from anything that could, candles, anything could spark in this tinderbox that we're in right now. And no fireworks, obviously. So the ban will remain in effect until further notice. Please do all you can to comply. Make sure your neighbors comply, and hopefully, pray for a lot of rain. Whoever thought we'd be saying that, right? Tonight, we have some important legislative items on the agenda, a few of which I want to highlight. There are several notable items from the Finance Policy Committee, two of which are resolutions to approve the insertion of special items of revenue in the municipal budget. One's for the 24 Greening Union County grant in the amount of $6,000, which supplements our tree planting program for next year. And the other is for the Kids Recreation Grant in the amount of $45,000 to help fund an upgrade to the Memorial Park tennis courts. And lastly, we have a public hearing and ordinance on second reading to amend the One Westfield Place redevelopment plan following the planning board's unanimous finding last week that it remains consistent with the master plan. And just a little background, I know that's why many of you are here. As covered in the presentations by our team of professionals at the last town council meeting, the project is being reduced by 25%, yet still delivers $157 million in revenue to the town over 30 years that can support future budget needs and our lower taxes, deliver significant public benefits, including 2 pedestrian plazas and several traffic improvements, and it supports what we've always said are our key objectives, and that's expanding and diversifying our tax base, restoring downtown jobs and increasing daytime foot traffic, improving pedestrian safety and traffic mitigation, and advancing our affordable housing obligations while protecting the town from high density residential development. And once again, to remind everybody, what we're voting on tonight, this is simply an amendment to the existing redevelopment plan. It's not a replacement plan. It's not a vote to revisit the entire project. If the smaller amended plan does not pass the council, the existing RDP for the larger plan that was approved and adopted in 2023 remains in place. That's just a fact, and that's how the redevelopment process works. Regarding tonight's hearing, Town Planner Don Samet and redevelopment attorney Steve Malenik will be available to answer any questions that arise. As part of this process, I will also take the opportunity to ensure that we correct any misinformation that has been shared. While I do appreciate that some may have different points of view on this project, sharing misinformation does a terrible disservice to the public by undermining potential valid points of concern. And today's example of that, I had a resident send me a letter yesterday outlining what his concerns were about 1 Westfield Place, and it included a lot of misperceptions about the project. Like I do with everybody that reaches out to me, I offer to have a phone conversation so we can have a dialogue, which I always find more fruitful than a back and forth email exchange. And he and I spoke this afternoon, and after addressing all his concerns, which are fairly consistent with what we hear about traffic and so forth, he acknowledged that there's a lot of nuance in the decisions we make. And it's very easy to have a social media talking point. But he appreciated the strategic thought that was behind a lot of these things. And I said at the end, if you told me at this end of the conversation you still believed it wasn't the right thing to do, I would totally respect that, because at least I felt like he was making a decision that was based upon factual information. So I just think in order for us to have a real dialogue with the community, it's important that people have the facts and we have an obligation to share the facts and then let people draw conclusions based upon that. So tonight's public hearing is how the legislative process is designed to work, providing our community several weeks after the ordinance introduction to read the information, contact their council members, and attend tonight's meeting to ask questions of the council before the final vote. While I was disheartened that our votes were split along party lines at the last meeting, I remain grateful that we have the opportunity to hear from the public tonight as a result of that outcome. And so just regarding tonight's process, the public hearing, which will be at the beginning of the meeting on the amended RDP ordinance, is only for questions related specifically to the zoning amendments being voted on. Comments on any other aspects of the project, whether it's parking or financials or anything like that, should be reserved for the public comment portion later in the meeting. And if people come up and start talking about things unrelated to the amendment, I'm going to ask you to sit down and come back for the public comment. It's a really important part of the public record, so that's why I'll be doing that. It's also worth noting that the introduction and potential adoption of the redevelopment agreement and all financial components related to the proposed amendments that were initially going to be on tonight's agenda have been moved to subsequent meetings to allow the Finance Policy Committee adequate time for review. In the coming weeks, the town will be posting extensive updated FAQs and information on the amendments to the redevelopment agreement and financial agreements, which will clarify the terms for the public and dispel any information that may be circulating. A detailed financial presentation will be shared with the public at a future meeting before the vote takes place. So with that, let's get to the agenda tonight. Ms. Lashy, do we have any petitions or communications?
Yes, Mayor, on November 11th at 8:53 p.m., the members of the Town Council and I received communication from the Westfield Advocates regarding General Ordinance 2024-24. The email included the Westfield Advocates for Responsible Development report to the Planning Board dated November 4th, 2024, and the reply brief their attorney filed in the Appellate Division on September 25th, 2024. A copy of the email and attachments have been distributed to all council members.
Are there any advertised hearings?
Yes, Mayor. We have an advertised hearing for General Ordinance 2024-24, an ordinance adopting an amendment to the Lord and Taylor Train Station Redevelopment Plan. Anyone wishing to be heard on General Ordinance 2024-24, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
This is the public hearing on the ordinance. I just want you all to know. So.
Courtney Shale, 511 Thurman Avenue. So regarding the amendments, I saw there were significant changes to the South Avenue offices and parking. Essentially, instead of 2 office buildings, it's going to be 1 office building and a big old parking garage. So we're going to have 2 parking garages now and 1 office building. Since this project was introduced, I always questioned the cost-benefit of building a wall of offices and buildings separating the south and north sides of town. What are we getting in return for ruining the aesthetics of the town, creating congestion, increasing traffic, moving commuters to inconvenient parking, and spending well over $30 million to build these parking garages to make room for these offices? Are we getting more weekday shopper and commuting parking? No. In fact, the parking is actually decreasing under the amendments. One Westfield Place is still not providing sufficient parking for his office employees and visitors, and between 150 to 200 employees will have no place to park at those offices and will end up using shopper parking downtown. So what exactly are we getting? As the town has repeatedly told us, and as the mayor reiterated tonight, we're buying foot traffic. We were told that these offices were desirable to create downtown foot traffic because the town lost 2,000 employees during the pandemic from commercial tenants leaving. So what's the dollar value of that foot traffic that we're spending $30 million to get? With all the consultants and experts that the town has hired on this project, they never had an economic analysis of that aspect of the project. Instead, they relied on a report that was bought and paid for by Streetworks. And as a lawyer, I think any lawyer knows you can pretty much buy somebody to say whatever you want them to say. So the fact that the town didn't get its own independent report is very troubling to me. I don't even think the full report's available online. I had to get it through an Oprah request. There's only an executive summary that doesn't even address the actual spending downtown. That's in the full report. According to the report, each and every office worker who commutes to the offices in Westfield, whether they're an executive or a janitor, will spend almost $6,000 a year in Westfield during their lunch hour and after work. Multiply that by the projected 480 office workers at South Avenue under the amendments, and they would spend about $2.88 million a year downtown. But what if the Streetworks is wrong? What if the report is not accurate? If these office workers only spend $5,000 a year instead of $6,000 a year, the spending benefit is only $2.4 million. And if they only spend $4,500 a year, then the spending benefit is already less than the cost of the annual debt service on the bonds to build all these parking garages. And even if Streetworks is correct that the office workers will spend $6,000 a year, they never factored in the loss from daily shoppers. Office workers will be displacing weekday shoppers by using between 150...
Michelle, I'm trying to understand why this is related to the amendments. If you want to come back at public comment and speak to that, but this is your comment should be specific to the zoning changes for the amendment. That what you're addressing is financials and so forth, not related to the amendment we're voting on tonight.
It's related to the amendment.
Not to the zoning.
Why the amendments should be approved. If the amendments don't make any sense, how can you justify amendment?
The amendment is this is a zoning amendment addressed to height, bulk, things like that. What you're commenting on is related to more financials and economics, which is not what's being voted on tonight.
So the amendment isn't changing the square footage of the offices?
I'm not following your connection.
So you're saying it's a zoning amendment. So the zoning amendment changes the square footage of the offices, correct?
And you're correct, and your point is?
My point is, if you're changing the square footage of the offices and you voted on the original plan based upon the benefits to the town, obviously you thought this was a great plan and you voted on it, the amendments change all that. They reduce the office square footage, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so when you're reducing the office square footage, don't you consider what the impact that has on the overall plan and what you're getting from the benefit?
So I hear you saying we should actually keep the larger plan. You
Honestly,
like more office space.
Honestly, I didn't think that one was good either, but you know what? Financial benefit-wise, you probably are better off. Because to spend $30 million for reduced office space and reduced benefit, who benefits from that? Not the town. Honestly, who's gonna benefit from that? The town? No. So if you like, I'll come back and I'll say it again during public comment.
Anybody else on this amendment?
I'm super not prepared. I don't have paper
okay. It's the way we like it. I'm sorry, microphone, and state your name and address.
Robert Parker. I live at 330 Edgewood Avenue.
Very nice to meet you in person,
Yeah,
Robert.
and so, first of all, you are correct. Whenever I write to you, you respond, you offer to talk, and I appreciate that. So this is pretty naive, and I don't mean to set everybody going backwards, but in a real short period of time, so I appreciate you're trying to separate the dissatisfaction with the overall project, which I think you can feel the tension, versus the amendment. Can you help us understand why it was okay to do an amendment but not revisit the project? Now, maybe that belongs in the second half, but I'm trying to address the amendment itself. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I can address that. And you can stay up here if you want, Robert. I could, unless you don't want to. So just to be clear about the amendment. So in the conversations when Streetworks was going down the road with tenants for the Lord and Taylor building, which they had gotten fairly far down the road, the tenants had made specific requests that they wanted some changes to the office to accommodate their tenant requirements, which is a very common thing as you move to tenancy and they need certain specs in order to accommodate them. So the conversation with Streetworks was, and those changes are reflected in the West Zone changes today. They wanted parking that was exclusive to the office workers, not that was commingled with residential as it was originally planned. I think it's very obvious that there are medical office tenants, and the Lord and Taylor building is very attractive to medical office, the entire building medical office, and many of them wanted an urgent care in there as a component of the larger medical office services they provided. So when we were talking to them about making these smaller changes, we had also taken the opportunity to have Streetworks speak to everyone on this council, including the 4 new council members. And we said if we are making changes, it would be a good opportunity to maybe revisit and take into account the feedback that came from those meetings to reflect maybe broader changes than, quite frankly, what Streetworks had even asked for. And so the amendments that you see are actually a reflection of larger changes that we asked for than what they had originally sought because of the tenant requirements. And that's where we are today.
Bob McNamara, 603 Lawrence Avenue. Once again, we've heard the mayor talk about a 25% reduction in this project, and that's absolutely incorrect. This amendment actually increases the entire scope of the project by 16%. And it's obvious that when you have initially 155,000 square feet of above-grade parking, and you change it to 421,000 feet of above-grade parking, you're obviously going to increase the size of the buildings. That's what's happened, okay? So I think we need to understand why we keep hearing about this reduction when it's actually a 16% increase. That I'd like to know the answer of. Second, as I mentioned at the last council meeting, since round 4 of the affordable housing obligates new developments to be 20% affordable, have you asked the developer to increase their percentage from 15% to 20%? I would think that that would be a negotiable item that we can get on the table. And I don't think it's that big a lift for the developer to do that. And lastly, I wanted to understand the process. In the agreement, there was supposed to be a review committee that would come to us and also tell us monthly where they stood with the leasing opportunities, and all of that. And we've never heard that the review committee even exists, that they got monthly reports from Streetworks. I'd like to have an answer on that as well. Thank you.
So Don or Steve, will you guys want to address those comments?
I can speak to the 25% reduction in the scope of the project. The redevelopment plan regulates the allowable square footage of residential and non-residential space. When you look at the concepts that were prepared by Streetworks, and the existing set are in the redevelopment agreement, right? And then the proposed concepts, which we saw a bit of at your meeting at the end of October. So the square footage reduction in non-residential and residential space is a 25% reduction from the original concept to the concepts now. So that number is accurate. And I know, I think the statement I heard and what I've read also is that, well, the overall above grade square footage of the buildings is increasing, right? Well, you know, we have to look at, as a planner, I look at the scope of the project as being the one that's related to intensity of development. When we look at the intensity of development, we're looking at how much space is dedicated to those principal uses, the office spaces, the retail, the residential. It's that which drives parking demand, it's that which drives other accessory uses that may be part of the site. So when you look at scale, you're not only looking at square footage, you're looking at things like heights. You are addressing massing of buildings with using setbacks from property lines, step backs of upper stories, allowable coverage percentages. All these things help reduce the appearance of massing. I think of, I actually thought of this afternoon. I remember being in school and in science class, we had this experiment, and there were two glass beakers, right? One was tall, but it had a sort of a narrow base when compared to another beaker or flask, which was shorter, it had a wider base. And the teacher asked, well, which one is bigger, right? And everyone said, the taller one, the taller one. And the point I'm trying to make is that your appearance of massing and the scale of these buildings can and will, I think, in this case, be different with an allowable reduced height. But shorter buildings, perhaps more square footage overall above. We haven't verified that. But even so, I think the provisions that are in place in this plan, the lesser heights that are permitted, are going to reduce the appearance of massing on this building. And the allowable square footages for residential and non-residential is going to reduce the intensity of this development.
And that's what's being reduced by 25%.
That's what's being reduced by 25%. So reduction in parking demand and also a reduction in trips generated from the project. Fewer office square footage, fewer trips from the site.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Salmon, I have a question. So is
Yeah.
Mr. McNamara's statement true or false? I just would like to know that
Well,
answer.
is it true? Okay, so the scope of the project, when measured by the allowable residential and non-residential square footage, reduces by 25%. Does the above-grade massing of structures increase? Haven't verified the numbers. Even if it does, right?
I'm sorry. You can do whatever you want to me or anybody up here, but you will not disrespect our staff.
Yeah. Even if it does, what I'm saying is that there are specific standards in the plan that will mitigate any appearance of that massing. And I think in particular, with this amendment, with the lower heights, we are not going to see that impact of scale or massing that we would under the original plan.
Just along the mayor's lines of being honest and open, when I hear 25% reduction in scope, I think of 25% smaller everything. So that's not true, because it's maybe looks smaller because it's lower and flatter, but the amount of building space is not smaller. Is that correct? Because there's garages and building. The amount of structure is not smaller.
I think overall, the amount of building space, including below grade and above grade, will certainly be lower. I think that's clear. Will above grade be different? I think it will be, yes. But I think a 25% reduction in scope is an accurate statement. As a planner, I'm looking primarily at that non-residential and residential space when I'm looking at the intensity of the development and what I would consider the scope of the project. The parking serves those uses.
But it's still a structure. But thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And Steve, do you address the review committee?
Absolutely, yes. So the review committee was established just by the signing of the agreement. The agreement itself says who is on the review committee. A reminder that we haven't really gone far in the review committee or the construction phase at all because there was a lawsuit filed and force majeure was called on that. If you look at Article 4 of the redevelopment agreement, the monthly reporting that was commented on, that doesn't start and trigger until construction begins. So the monthly reporting will happen once construction begins, but that phase hasn't started yet. With respect to the activities of the review committee, there was some activity early on in connection, not necessarily with the redevelopment agreement, but with the PICA, we call it, the Public Improvements Construction Agreement, wherein Streetworks was basically in charge of the construction oversight of the public improvements. The town obviously has also hired an owner's representative to represent its interest, but the review committee was tasked with reviewing the responses to RFPs for various design professionals, and the review committee did serve that function. One of the comments that was made was that the review committee has to report publicly, and that's not anywhere in the redevelopment agreement. The activities that they have done is administrative, and that was set up that way intentionally.
But that's an RDA issue, not an RDP issue anyway.
That is an RDA
Right.
issue, not an RDP issue.
Got it.
Correct.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
Hi, everyone. Ed Korecki. I live on Charles Street, right around the corner from a lot of this development. In fact, it's much in our backyards, okay? And I'm not sure if what I'm going to address is specific to the amendment, but I'm going to give it a try. I understand there's 2 more townhomes that are planned to be on the North Avenue, North Townhouse development element of the project. And I understand also that the pervious ground ratio is going to be decreased in that same development area, okay? The people on Charles Street in general are going to be impacted severely by the townhomes, okay? And would appreciate as much pervious ground space screening as possible to mitigate, the development in that area. So I hope we would discuss whether that element of the amendment is appropriate for this particular plot in the overall project. I also had a question. I'm not sure if it's the 2 additional townhomes are expected to be developed in this area are now said to be optionally facing Clark Street. I'd like to understand whether there is going to be egress to Clark Street from these townhomes, okay, and how we are addressing that traffic impact, and whether all of the townhomes in this particular area are going to have egress into Clark Street and how that might impact the traffic on Clark Street. And the reason I'm concerned about it, I walk down Clark Street from Charles, 3 times a week at least. I see that it is an issue today, without increased traffic crossing that street. Between Charles Street and North Avenue, it's about 500 feet. There are 8 egresses from Ferris Place, North Avenue, the parking lot for the Y, entrance and exit, the Bank of America ATM entrance and exit, Ludlow also is another egress into Clark Street. It is a mess today, okay? And the concern is safety for our community, our neighborhood, for the kids coming from Roosevelt, going downtown, okay? And for all of the children and adults that are dropped off at the cut-in for the Y there. It's a lot of traffic, and the people parking in the Y parking lot crossing Clark Street to get into the Y. It is a nightmare there, and any additional traffic, you know, is going to be a problem. Now, the light that is proposed to be at North Avenue and Clark Street, okay, what impact, where can we see the impact to Clark Street? What's anticipated as far as the backup when that light is red, okay? Are people going to be routing down Charles Street to hit North Avenue, beat that light, okay? When people are coming in from Farris Place, from Sophia, and the exit from the town homes that will be built at Farris and North, okay? They're going to come into Farris and go out onto Clark Street. If that light is red, how do they get onto Clark Street? Are they going to go right and then go down to Charles Street and to cut over to North Avenue? Where is the detail on any traffic study relative to this neighborhood? That's what my concern is. So I hope you can supply some answers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, guys, seriously, no applause this evening, please. We want to keep the process moving. I'm sorry? No, you do. It's just, I'm just saying, let's just hold the applause. It doesn't matter, just respectfully. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mr. Korecki. I'm so sorry. Don, do you want to talk about why some of those changes to the townhouses were made specifically? It was to protect, the two facing on Clark Street, to address and the traffic study?
Yeah, so as was stated, the requirements for a new traffic signal at Clark and North, there'll have to be specific timing put into those. The traffic experts know this better than I do, but they'll have specific timing so that they'll have to be able to get in and out of Ferris and take into account the driveways and all of that. Peak demands, off-peak demands will impact the traffic timing. So the other part of the question was
the changes to the townhouses. If I recall, the reason those two townhouses were moved was actually so that the folks on Charles wouldn't have to be looking at the back of those.
The back.
Two.
Well, there was
if I remember right.
Yeah, there was at one point there was an ask to have townhomes closer in the rear yard of the site, if you will. That would have been closer to the homes on Charles. The town did not agree to that. The town wanted those townhomes to face onto Clark and not, so that therefore there wouldn't be as large of an impact on the neighbors that have property frontage on Charles.
That's right. And can you talk about is it the setback next to Bank of America?
Setback next to Bank of America is defined in the plan. I forget the exact number, but there were some minor changes to the setbacks to accommodate the 18 units on that site. But the overall number of units doesn't change.
Correct.
On townhouse units in the project.
Correct.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question on that? Yeah. Just for clarity, because he asked a few questions there, and I just want to make sure I can reiterate. One, will there be a detailed traffic study with this new amendment that he can see how it impacts his neighborhood? Because I think that's what at the end of the day he's looking for.
Yeah, my understanding is that it's in the works. And plus, with North Avenue being at that point, I guess it's a county road, there will have to be detailed traffic study prepared and submitted to the state as well, or excuse me, county.
Can I just make one comment on that? Sure. It's just, I don't want to lose this, but Mr. Korecki's question is a good one. On our website right now, Kimley Horn, which is a company that Streetworks hires, and our company, WSP, is our consultant that verifies everything that they do. There are multiple detailed traffic analyses on our website since 2023, which directly address this area. The only real changes in this area on that side of the street is a shifting of the two units to the across from Lord and Taylor versus the Clark and North intersection. So there are detailed information you want to go on there. There's all sorts of fun stuff you want to look at it, the calculations and so forth. And part of the proposal for traffic changes here is a new traffic light, not only be a new traffic light, but a complete redesign of that intersection, which requires DOT and county approval. When I say realignment or redesign, that means further bump outs, more pedestrian areas, turning movement changes, all to address wait time, queuing, anything that may be from the ingress egress of the new units or the existing traffic patterns on Ferris and Clark with the Y, Bank of America, and the Realty Company, which is now going to be some new plates there as well. So that was all analyzed, and it's been on the website for quite a while. So if you have, Mr. Krecky, if you want to look at that, it's all there on the front page of the website.
So yes, I'd say, go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to Jim said a lot of what I was going to say, but to Councilman Saunders, I just want to add, as you've said, Mayor, this is the zoning, and I want to reiterate you and the members of the public that when we talk about the redevelopment agreement, there is an obligation also in the redevelopment plan that before the planning board hears this as a site plan, that updated traffic study needs to be part of that as well. And the redevelopment agreement even goes further, that requires a construction plan before construction to begin to actually analyze how the impact of the construction activities are going to impact things like commuter parking and traffic flow, and there has to be mitigation plans for just that phase as well. So I just want to reiterate.
Excuse, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't usually do this, but I just want to add something. As you know, the development is happening on both sides of Clark Street on property owned by Lord and Taylor. So it is true that there is an increase from, just as an order of magnitude, an increase of 16 to 18 units on the North Avenue side. There's a decrease of 16 to 14 units on the Clark Street side. So there is no increase overall.
Correct.
That means also, of course, that the traffic won't increase overall, logically speaking. And of course, when you're talking about, even if it were 2 additional properties or units, you can imagine, and I'm not a traffic engineer either, but the order of magnitude of the increase in traffic, the daily trip flows from one unit would be something like 1, 2, or 3 trips per day. So it's important to keep that
It's a
in
good
mind.
reminder. Thank you. The usage isn't changing.
Question, going back to the traffic studies in general. So you said Streetworks funds a traffic study. Is there a study that's done independently? I mean, you can hire somebody to find the results you want. I was a math major, you can take numbers and change it. So do we hire somebody totally that's not invested in this to do an independent traffic study looking at egress and ingress, not of just that area, of all of Westfield, because there's units going everywhere. And we've never seen anything that addresses everything.
Yeah, so the town's professional team has never just taken what Kimley Horn and Streetworks has proposed as a given. Early on in this process, the town retained John Federico and his team to be an independent for the town side analyst. And I'm sure I can speak for everybody here. That process was iterative and a lot of revisions were made based on Mr. Federico's analysis. And so, yes, there's no assumptions on the town's part that they're correct without us doing our double checking.
And that was done 5 years ago or so?
No.
It's been done throughout the process.
Thank you.
And when Kimley Horn updates their numbers, then WSP and John Federico will go back and look at those numbers
Correct.
again, correct?
They work together.
Yeah, Don, can
and-
you talk?
And I'm sorry, David, I just also wanted to ask a clarifying question, which I think I know the answer to, but in addition to the intersection itself being adjusted, because right now it's a very complicated intersection, the North and Clark intersection, and Mr. Krecky, I have to apologize, I went down Clark Street every day that I took my kids to the high school, so I didn't have to wait at North because it was impossible to make a left-hand turn from Clark onto North. So I just want to say that I think it will improve once we are able to get that intersection to adhere to standards, particularly when the DOT has to look at it because it's a county road and because we'll now have the benefit of much higher technology, equipment at that intersection. So we can set times to let traffic flow based on the time of day and based on smart sensors for how many cars are in a queue and all those kinds of things. So I definitely appreciate your current concerns because there are a lot of things going on in that section. And we are going to be adding new and different kinds of things. But we did have a very significant department store that had a lot of traffic coming and going. It hasn't been there for a few years, but this is, if you go back to what the traffic was then and compare it to what the traffic will be in the future with this new development, if we're adding these, this technology into the mix and improvements to the intersection, all of these things have been thought through, and I'm surprised that Councilman Armento isn't aware of the WSP traffic study, because all of those things have been on the website since before we voted on this in February of '23. But I am watching this. I am your ward representative. I drive those streets all the time, and I have asked a lot of hard questions about whether this intersection will improve. And I actually think that you will see less traffic on Charles Street because it'll be a lot easier to go down and make turns at the bottom of Clark.
One of the things I think worth...
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, only speaking from the microphone up here, please, so Steve.
Yeah, one of the things, because I read one comment that I think needs to be clarified, which is that I think there may be an assumption that the traffic improvements are being put into place to address the new developments which come into place. There's really two levels, right? There's the traffic improvements which are obviously addressing the new development, but it's really going above and beyond that. And one of the things, as the mayor said earlier on, which is, all of the investment that this is allowing the town to do in the public improvement realm. Part of that is traffic improvements to status quo. It's not just to address the new development, but to improve it beyond that, which I think sometimes gets lost.
And I also just, the lights, I think that people forget, like, any new light is going to be a pedestrian LED light, which means, how you turn on, the pedestrian goes first before the light changes. People forget how important that is, so it's a huge, huge safety measure. And I do want to just reiterate in terms of going back to the professionals, we have our own professionals for everything, for traffic, for planning, for bond counsel, everything. They are duplicative to what Streetworks does. And I think when people say that we're not just taking their numbers, we have our own professionals that are representing us. By the way, the Streetworks, ultimately, we charge them for it out of an escrow account. So they are advocating for us. They are to make sure that we are getting the numbers and stuff that we want, not being handed to us by a developer. That's a really, really important fact for everybody to know. So, Councilman Contract.
Yeah, I just wanted, Councilman Armento, you asked about looking at traffic holistically. I thought it might be helpful for Don to talk a little bit about during the master plan process. There was a full townwide assessment that was done from a traffic perspective in light of the projected changes that were coming. And I do think that helped inform a lot of the work, because John Federico was involved in that. I think that's really important to know, like the town has looked at traffic, looked at circulation. There's a whole component to the master plan around circulation. You may not be aware of it because you weren't on the council, but I think that's important for the public to know. I do want to also just make one comment about traffic from a Ward 3 perspective. The traffic plans are not finalized, right? We're still at the very high level sort of plan side of things. Like, I'm not comfortable with South Avenue. I've told John Federico that. Liz knows this as well. That's still being looked at. So there's a lot of, like, what I hear is concerns about South Avenue. That is not set in stone. And as Linda said, she's watching this intersection at Clark and North. I'm definitely watching South Avenue, right? That's critical. And the entire team at Streetworks and internally knows, plus the state and the county are involved. So I just want the public to know that what you might see or read on Facebook is not necessarily fact and not baked in and not
And the planning
finalized.
board site plan review process
Correct.
is intended to do that.
Correct.
Before Dawn addresses your question, I think Liz,
Yeah,
Jeff,
actually, you hit exactly what I was going to say, Councilman Contract. I just wanted to indicate that we, as a town, as the mayor said, hire a professional team. We have professionals, but I think it's important to note what you just stated, which is that we not only have our own professionals looking out and double-checking numbers that are handed to us, which is not exactly common practice in municipalities throughout the state. Usually they do take reports, and they don't have, whether it's a traffic or parking report or any of those things, independent professionals hired to work on behalf of the town to double-check all those numbers. So we do have that, but WSP, in this case, did our master plan. They're familiar with the back traffic, the future traffic flows projected. They've done all that work, which means we have continuity of professional service. And I think it's extremely valuable for Westfield in general, not just this project, but every single one, to have our own independent consultant that's been with us for years and was part of the actual master plan research and product. So thank you for bringing that out.
Okay, Mr. Salmon.
Yeah, Councilman Contract, I think you asked a question about the background of the traffic. It's right, it actually goes back to the master plan reexamination. So that was adopted back in 2019, and we are working on that. We had a recently adopted affordable housing plan. We were seeing development in and around downtown. And through the master plan reexamination, we saw a desire to redevelop parts of downtown, right? And we also knew that affordable housing developments were starting to be planned, and now we're seeing some of them come online. So we knew that we needed to address that traffic growth along with the land use side of things, and we recommended the creation of the unified land use and circulation element of the master plan, which is, of course, now adopted, and it forms a foundation for the redevelopment plan that's before you, and the amendment that's before you, I should say. And in that land use and circulation plan, there was a holistic assessment of the development taking place in town and its traffic impacts. And that was a great foundation for the traffic work that's been going on here in town. And in the redevelopment plan itself, you'll see a lot of callbacks to the master plan circulation part of the land use circulation element. So, yeah, so there's a long history to traffic. We've been looking at it for years. It's not just because of this project or any one particular project.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So Mr. Sanders, quick question. We look at the traffic in Westfield. Now,
Yep.
obviously, the surrounding towns are building
Yep.
different things. Just now, I guess on Springfield Avenue, Mountainside knocked down a building and a house, and they're supposedly building some kind of, I think, I'm not sure, some kind of apartments or something there, but a multi-residential facility.
Mm-hmm.
Do you work with the other towns, and does the traffic assessment take into consideration what's going on leading out of Westfield through Mountain Avenue, all those apartments?
The answer is
Actually,
yes.
and maybe Jim, want to talk about the grant? Is that, I was thinking the two of you.
The answer is
Yeah.
yes.
Yes.
The towns do talk to each other, but on that exact topic, I wanted to mention, both Town of Westfield itself and Union County, with a partner of Elizabeth, both applied for what's called SS4A grants, Safe Streets for All. County received that grant last year. We received our grant this year. The only other town in the county, I think, is Union that received it besides Elizabeth and Westfield. And so that SS4A grant the county is doing, we're part of that. Chief Badalore and I attended a meeting a few weeks ago now for the kickoff meeting. We'll be coming back to the Public Safety Committee and I'm making updates as they make updates, but that is looking at all traffic in the entire county, taking into consideration developments, particularly on the major corridors, North and South Avenue, which is a lot of development happening in all the communities. But it's actually, so we're involved in that study. That's taking in account all of that. We have our own study then we're doing to be complementary to that, which will look at town traffic above and beyond what we've already looked at. So that's just important to note that that's ongoing, continuing, and part of the other
And Jim,
towns.
just to clarify to your point, which is a good one, the county, it's the county that would be looking at it holistically, and that grant goes from, it's the Route 28 corridor from Elizabeth to Plainfield. And so that's really, and then what Jim said, we then feed into that on all of the other streets. And I do think it's important to note, I mean, traffic is a big concern for everybody. I mean, I was telling someone today, we all drive in the same traffic you do. I live right off of North Avenue. I'm close to the North Avenue, Central Avenue intersection. So there's times I can't pull out of my main street onto North Avenue because of the traffic. So it's not that we're sitting here oblivious to the traffic impact. We all feel it and experience it. But we also have to deal with the realities of being in Westfield, where we're bifurcated by two state highways, Central Avenue, which drives people between the Parkway and Route 22. And the question is, I think this is what the county, they're not going to come back and say, oh, don't build anymore, or don't grow anymore, don't invest anymore. What they're going to say is, we need significant infrastructure improvements to better mitigate the traffic impact and improve traffic flow. So that's really, you're not going to stop traffic. You're not. And even if we decided, okay, we're not going to do one more thing because there's too much traffic, I can tell you what, everybody around us will be doing that, and that traffic is flowing through Westfield. So the worst thing we could do is stick our head in the sand and say, let's don't do anything because we don't want any more traffic. And that meanwhile, we're not getting any of the rateable benefits or any of the other benefits that could actually pay for infrastructure to make it better for all of us. And that really is, the focus needs to be on traffic mitigation and infrastructure improvements. And that's what the county is going to do. That's what the town is going to do. And that's, quite frankly, what One Westfield Place is also intended to do. Not just dealing with traffic for the future, but dealing with the mess that we all sit in today.
Mayor Maska, ask a question?
I'm sorry, no, if you, well, let me just say something. We're still on the amendment RDP, so if you have a question, we have to follow a process. If you want to come back and speak to the amendment, or you can wait for public comment. So.
Yeah, just a quick question on the hold period. There was a question asked last meeting about how long, we're going into a relationship potentially with a partner, and I understand that the contract can't necessarily be assigned to another developer or someone else to build it out with it on our consent, but I'd like to rest assured that if we're going into business with a partner, that there's a minimum hold period, that they're part of this. So what is that minimum hold period? How does that look? And can they flip this in a year from now or 3 years from now? How does that look?
No, so there's two phases of control over both ownership of the property, their property now, and eventually at some point, if this goes through, then the south project, or the south and north areas, not the whole lots, but the areas that are under contract to be sold to them. So there's two phases. The first phase is during construction of any of the components. During that, no transfers can be made either of the property or the project outside of the consent of the council. So that's the first phase. So they couldn't flip this in a year unless you guys all agreed with who they're flipping it to, okay? And that flipping is not just outright, if they want to sell their membership interest, if they want to sell control, 51%, any of that requires council consent. After the projects are complete, there's a little bit less control, because they've completed their obligations under the redevelopment agreement. They did what they said they were going to do. But as long as they will still be under a financial agreement, that being the pilot for any of those components, there is still a level of transfer control that this council has. It sort of shifts from a more discretionary role where you would have more control to a situation where you're just making sure that who they're transferring it to checks all the professional boxes. But you would still, during the complete duration of that 30-year pilot or however long they keep it, have control over their transfers.
I've got one as well. I might as well get you while you're up here.
Sure.
So let's just say we get to the point where we're at that phase where we have quote unquote less control. They come to us and they say, we can't go ahead and fill the space as we'd like to have filled it. Are we held hostage to go ahead and make changes to our ordinances to allow for them to go ahead and make a profit so that we can go ahead and get paid?
Well, that phase only comes after the buildings are all completed, after all our public improvements that are tied to that particular phase are completed, after they have started the pilot, which is, as we've talked about last time, and this is, again, about the zoning, so I don't want to get too much into it, but if the negotiations go through as suggested, they will have a minimum tied to our debt service. All of that will already happen before your scenario comes into play where they're not be able to lease and they want to change it. So in that scenario, they'd be coming to us and saying, we want to change what we've already built, so which means either adaptively reuse what we already built or tear it down. So I wouldn't characterize it as being held hostage. You would have that complete control to make those decisions.
What time frame would that approximately happen in?
Each component has a different phase of, or when they're supposed to start construction. So when they're supposed to get approvals from the planning board, then when they're supposed to get approvals from the state and the county and all those other governmental agencies, then when they're supposed to commence construction, then when they're supposed to complete construction. Each component has its own schedule. If this amendment goes through, then we're going to have to negotiate an amendment to the redevelopment agreement as well, which would then come back before you, and there'd be a new schedule assigned to that. But as I mentioned before, the schedules that are currently in the RDA right now are all told because of the lawsuit that was filed.
Thank you.
Got it.
A quick
Yeah,
question.
we have, we are jumping ahead on,
Yes.
do you have an amendment question?
Oh,
Or-
yes, I do have an amendment.
Okay, because
I just
we are
want-
going to have a whole nother thing on financials, so.
Appreciate the answer.
Well, it's
Yes,
sort of-
I'm sure you do.
It's sort of.
I'm just trying to be mindful of
It's not financial,
time.
but it's on the amendment because
Yeah.
the amount that the town receives is less. I just want to clarify, you mentioned it's 157 million. I was under the impression the net is 100 million. Is that, what's the net to the town over 30 years?
So you're subtracting the cost of the debt.
Right.
Which pays for the public improvements. So the consideration in total would be the 150 some odd number because it'll be the cash in the revenue, but also the value of the public improvements made.
And that's if they hit all their parameters, is that correct?
Well, no, under the new proposal, they would be obligated to pay no less than the debt service.
No less than debt service.
Correct.
Okay, so let's move on to
Thank you.
amendment questions. Any more comments from the public related to the amendment?
Denise Sherwood, 642 Hanford Place. I think this is an appropriate question, I'm not sure. If you could answer why they reduced the sidewalk in front of Lord and Taylor from 25 feet to 15, and why we are going to now have 10 parallel parking spaces on North Avenue in front of Lord and Taylor. I was just wondering why they were doing that. Because to me, it sounds like it would impede traffic with people parallel parking. I could be wrong, but I was just wondering why that was a change. And then also, why we talked about Boulevard being beautiful. They had like the big numbers on the buildings near Boulevard so that you could come up Boulevard, come straight through to the train tracks, and it would be beautiful. And now, when I was looking at it, you go up to South Avenue, you have to make a left-hand turn, and now the entrance into the south side is a bend. So on the boulevard, it'd be like a wall. It wouldn't be boulevard straight through. So I guess if someone could answer those two questions, that'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Don? Yeah.
Thanks, Ms. Sherwood. So, yeah, there is no parallel parking that would be on South Avenue itself. Excuse me, on North Avenue. It would be in front of the Lord and Taylor building, much like exists today, where there's a row of parking right in front of the building, but not on the public street. For the boulevard, you were never able to drive from Boulevard, the street onto, okay. Yeah, so that Boulevard extension has shifted over, but it's also gotten wider. I forget the exact number of feet, but it's gotten wider, to 25 to 40 it may be. So you have a wider opening, if you will, more space between the two buildings that are proposed there.
And Dawn, isn't the vision for that, like if you're ever in New York City and you cut from one street to another through buildings, and there tends to be kind of this, almost like a.
We can get a cavernous kind of feel.
Like a park-like
if you have
kind
a
of
long-
thing. That's like, I think that's why, one of the reasons it went to 40 feet, so it can create that park-like experience between the two.
Exactly.
Right? So.
Right. Right, and maybe. And so, maybe I have a question for Don. Don, would you mind? Because I don't think it was answered. You may not have the answer, which is fine, but I had the same question Ms. Sherwood did, which was, why were these things done? And I think the one thing she mentioned was sidewalk width being reduced from 25 feet to 15 feet on North Avenue, west of Prospect. And so you may not know why they did it.
So that was
but number one, can you confirm that that is the case? And I read it too in the amendment.
I can't remember the number, but there is now the allowance for some parking in front of the Lord and Taylor building itself, not on North Avenue, in
I
front of
got
the building.
that.
So that changed the dimensions there in front of the building, so the sidewalk width may have narrowed a bit.
Is it, okay, so that may have just did that. All right.
Was that?
Yeah, it does. It just, that's a pretty big, that's 10-foot reduction though, right? Like, I mean.
15 feet is still pretty wide sidewalk, though.
Oh, yeah.
It's bigger than anything we
Absolutely.
have downtown.
Yeah, I think it might even, it's certainly in line with what the land use circulation plan recommends.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
I'm pretty sure this is, pertains to the amendment. It was something, Mayor Brindle, that you had posted. This pertains to the amendment? You wrote, important part of the plans for the North Side Plaza. Oh, Carrie Murphy, 502 Cotting Road. So we have the important part of the plans for the North Side Plaza. It fixes the horribly dangerous intersection at North and Elm to make it safer for cars and pedestrians, which of course is wonderful. But my question, I guess, is for you. You said that it would otherwise, I guess, notice how one of the most dangerous intersections in town at North and Elm is being fixed with this plan to make it safe for cars and pedestrians. You said it would otherwise be hard to get the change done. It would be difficult, but it wouldn't be impossible, right? Especially if you, as the mayor, are suggesting that it's horribly dangerous. To me, it's begging the question that if the town of Westfield knows it's horribly dangerous and has been for years, why are we waiting for this amendment, the One Westfield Place development, to fix it? Could this not have been addressed in prior years with our taxpayer dollars rather than keeping a horribly dangerous intersection in place? Are we now a town that relies on these developers and the pilot program dollars to fix our problems? Are we living by these pilot programs? If so, why? And why
I'm sorry,
can't
is this related to the amendment?
It is. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
I'm waiting.
Okay, well, I'm getting to it. I wait for you. You can wait as well. We should need to we should not need to rely on pilot programs to fix our problems, which you yourself had said was horribly dangerous, and it has been for years. I'm actually pretty stunned that you said that. You have known it was dangerous and didn't make any effort to try and fix it. I don't know why we're jeopardizing the safety of the town for this until the developer comes and fixes it. I find it to be a great part of the amendment, but do we have to wait until the developer, moves forward with their plan to fix something that we already know is a problem in our town and causes safety issues on a daily basis? So thank you to One Westfield Place for getting the job done where we should be doing it.
May I make a couple comments? Actually, Ms. Murphy, I'm glad you're here tonight because you're often asking a lot of questions about traffic studies, holistic traffic studies, and so I hope a lot of the questions that you've been asking us are clear. When Mr. Godet came to the mic and talked about the Union County study that's being done and all the work that's been done, the layering of the traffic studies that we do, how those traffic studies are approached. So I hope it's more clear to you because I know you ask that question often. So I can have Mr. Gilday come back to the mic and talk about how we do traffic studies because this isn't supposed to be a back and forth, Ms. Murphy. You ask some questions and I'm going to answer them. And okay. So, okay, if that's the case, then I'll ask Mr. Godet to repeat what he said a few minutes ago. Okay.
Okay, let me just, again, I think everyone heard me before, we're part of a county study that looks at holistically of the towns. But one other thing about the intersection at Elm and North, been doing this job a long time. It's not that we haven't looked at that intersection before. It's a state-controlled intersection, not a town-controlled intersection, not a county-controlled intersection, a state-controlled intersection. There actually have been some minor improvements made there, believe it or not. The states responded to our request over the time, but to do what is required here to really truly fix it is a redesign of the entire intersection. And part of the One Westfield Place project allowed us to explore that and make it part of this plan as something the town needed to make it the public improvements matter. One last thing to say, and back to the Clark and North discussion before, a lot of, or a handful of the traffic improvements that are in this plan, Streetworks did not want to do. Okay, the town forced them to include them in the plan as a public give back for this project in big picture because basically the town wanted these public improvements. Besides the plazas that we know about, traffic improvements was part of that. Elm and North, Clark and North, Prospect and Broad. to name a couple. South Avenue, same thing. And the traffic study information that is done, while there's been traffic studies done for the first plan, and they're all online, they've been there for a long, long time, when they get to the planning board level and they go in front of site plan, all those details with all the county and state DOT feedback, which could change things and make them even better, all those requirements are upon Streetworks to do on our behalf with our professionals overlooking it, making sure that they come out right for us. So I can just tell you that North and Elm is very frustrating to me, being around for a long time, but this plan allows us to do something there which is significant, not just putting a new traffic light in, physically changing how the intersection operates, which is significant. Correct, yes. Yes. Todd, you have a question? Or? Okay, no problem. Thanks. Yeah.
I think it's worth just pointing out one other thing, which is, you know, I sit on the finance committee with Councilwoman Hapgood, as well as Kiefer and Damagallo. You know, we literally invest about $3 million a year in this town, right? Which is what our current taxpayer base can support. Some of these intersection changes themselves cost in the millions of dollars. That is the reason why, you know, the improvements of the 10 intersections, the public improvements that you know, as part of this project are so important, you know, to the town, and the incremental revenues that this project develops. It enables us to do things that really, in our current sort of taxpayer-funded budget, primarily taxpayer-funded, we can't. Unless taxes are gonna go up, probably above the 2% that nobody's in favor of, and I'm surely not either. So I think it's really important to understand that. You know, $3 million paves roads and does some small, you know, other projects, minor traffic improvements, drainage projects, some field improvements. It doesn't fundamentally fix intersections. And I think that's the challenge, guys, right? So when the town has an opportunity to pursue a project like this that drives $150 million of incremental revenues, $42 million of public improvements, that is basically paid for by this project and the developer who's backstopping it, to me, those are really valuable benefits that the public shouldn't sort of ignore.
Well, no, you can come back at public comment. We're still in, so we're, I'm sorry, okay, go ahead. Only this time, Ms. Shale, only this time.
You told me my comments were irrelevant before. This is a specific question. Since they're answering questions, they usually don't do that.
Well, this is a public hearing versus public comment. It's different.
So my question is, so One Westfield Place apparently came over the summer and asked for certain changes that are reflected in the amendments. And the town said that they took that opportunity, and obviously significant leverage they had, to make changes to address some of the residents' concerns. Because there was no written submission by One Westfield Place, I'd like to know specifically what part of the amendments were requested by One Westfield Place versus what did the town negotiate as far as changes. So in other words, was this amendment reflect exactly what One Westfield Place wanted, or you said you came back and asked for certain things? What things did you ask for that were included in the amendments that One Westfield Place did not request?
I thought I answered that already, but I'm happy to repeat it. What they had asked for was on the west zone, on the Lord and Taylor building, what tenants that they had spoken to that were interested did not want to commingle their office parking with the residential parking, which was contemplated in the former agreement. So they needed to have a standalone parking that supported their office building exclusively. That was the main thing, which is why we took out the commingled parking on the residential side and put it behind the 20-some units, I think, that are going to screen the garage. That was that and an urgent care. That is what they requested. We're the ones that then came back and said, okay, let's take a look at at some of the other concerns related to traffic that we've heard, height, density, particularly on the south side. And we also wanted to accelerate the public improvements to the south side so that the south side didn't have to wait until the very end of the project to start getting the benefit of some of these traffic improvements and pedestrian and the green space. So that was how that was happening. And those comments were, those suggestions were done in response to what they heard in an April meeting from these council people and from what we have heard from the public. So so it was the collective we, I think, and the public. So.
And Mayor, I'll also add to the things that we got in the negotiation is the backstop to the principal and interest payments on the bonds.
Okay.
Which should probably come first.
Yes, and we'll address that at length in the financial conversation because that was critical. So somebody else, yes.
Rich Panikiewski, 233 Charles Street. With reference to the North Avenue phase of the project, the number of townhouses has increased from 16 to 18. In order to fit the 2 additional townhouses, pervious surface coverage has been reduced from 35 to 25%, and the minimum yard setback at block 2502, lot 15, has been reduced to 5 feet. Now, just for reference, that door that everyone walked through right there is 3 feet wide, so 5 feet on a setback. Now, I've attended many planning board meetings over the years, and I've sat and watched as homeowners have had to make concessions on proposed construction simply because they were short on the setback by as little as 6 inches. So I ask, why now should we allow this developer to increase the number of units from 16 to 18 at the expense of a 5-foot yard setback, a setback which would have been previously unheard of in the past in Westfield? By simply reducing the number of units back to the originally proposed 16, the setback issue goes away. The age restriction has been removed from these townhouses, which were previously approved for flat occupied roofs. When a comment that objected in the past to the flat roofs was offered, the response was that these were age-restricted units and that the visions of a younger, louder, livelier, and more precarious cloud were unwarranted, while now the age restriction is proposed to be removed. So in addition to issues associated with the invasion of privacy of Charles Street residents, the inevitable noise and safety issues are now even more of a concern. If this developer needs to remove age restrictions in order to be able to rent these townhouses, as a minimum, he should be asked to build these townhouses to match the character of the surrounding neighborhood. None, and I repeat, none of the residential homes on Charles Street or Clark Street have flat roofs. And I just wanted to remind you that the removal of the age restriction also introduces an additional potential burden on our schools and introduces more potential vehicular traffic. Mr. Jardine presented something a little earlier about a swap of 2 from one side to 2 from the other side. Well, that's not really true because we're removing the age restriction on the one side, and if you just read through your own proposal, the number of parking spots allotted has gone up from like 1.5 to like 2.25. So there will be more traffic at that intersection. It's not a 1-for-1 swap. One last comment regarding the North Avenue North phase of the project relates to an existing sewer easement. There's no mention of it anywhere in any of the documentation provided to the town's residents. However, a 10-foot sewer easement does in fact exist in block 2502, lot 14. Based on the conceptual renderings that are available on the town's website, it would appear the sewer easement will be buried under the proposed townhouses. With reference to the Lord and Taylor building phase of the project, the revised redevelopment plan now proposes a parking structure. No authoritative study to assess the impact of such a parking structure has been presented. At a minimum, some type of formal professional investigation into the impact of this parking structure should be mandated. Parking garages in the Lord and Taylor subzone were not an issue when the original redevelopment plan was proposed and approved. But now, with the addition of these parking garages, they're now an integral part of this project. They're an integral part of the construction, the financing, the scheduling, and the phasing. All of that is going to change, including the need for changes to the bond because of these parking structures. Your own people said that at the last town council meeting. These parking structures are going to change the character of the way this construction gets done. So H&B themselves said that there was really no professional data to back up the feasibility and practicality of these garages. They did their own little internal 1-for-1. I find it hard to believe that we're sitting here talking about parking studies that are ongoing, are going to be coming in the future, that are ongoing, and yet we're sitting here and you expect us to buy into this concept of a new parking garage right there on North Avenue. It's like unfathomable. I don't understand how you can do that. Maybe someone can explain to me how that works, seeing as these parking garages are going to change the whole character of how this project gets built. Thank you.
Anybody want to take that? Yeah.
Just the one issue about the impervious surfaces
Yeah.
with respect to, it's a small issue in the overall context, but as you know, Mayor, sitting on the planning board, it's an important concern of our town and many other towns around us, and a lot of these issues like impervious coverage can be dealt with at the site plan phase. Right. By requiring, pervious pavers and that sort of thing. But I do want to note with respect to that in particular increase from 25% to, from 35% to 25% in terms of pervious surfaces. Right now on that lot, which is the western Lord and Taylor lot, it's roughly 40,000 square feet. 100% of that lot is now impervious. So we are actually reducing the impervious, the pervious surface on that lot if they build to the maximum of 14,000 by 14,000 square feet. If it stays the same, it would be 10,000 square feet. So this is a minor change, but it's a change of 4,000 square feet in pervious surface. And again, if the planning board decides it wants to deal with that issue by requiring the developer to make pervious pavers and that sort of thing, they can do so. But 100% of the lot right now is impervious.
Thank you for that. And I also just going back to site plan and the planning board, they're the ones that will also be dealing with the finalizing the aesthetics and so forth. I mean, it'll be in a redevelopment agreement, but I think they'll be weighing in on that. Regarding the students, the entire One Westfield project, is projected to deliver 14 students. Since 170 of the units are over 55, and this has been validated by the school's own demographer when they just did the projected study. So it's 5 from the North Avenue apartments, and it's 9 from the townhouses. And by the way, these are using standard, best practice, standardized Rutgers projections. And we line them up against, I'll get to you, we line them up against current projections, and they're right on the money. So considering the students, Westfield School District has lost 412 students since 2014, that I speak to them regularly. There's absolutely zero concern by the schools about the impact on any of this development on enrollment. And the irony is about your concern about the parking spots and stuff. One of the reasons that we required them to put more parking spots behind the townhouses so that people would not park in the street. And it was meant to be an accommodation to the neighbors. And the reason those 2 townhouses were moved, again, so that it would be less obtrusive to the neighbors. So I just say that to let you know that that is always a full consideration of the things that have been negotiated. And just as a reminder that the parking I might be missing your point, but you're talking about the construction process perhaps, but the parking hasn't changed from it's a matter of how the parking is being delivered versus the number of spaces that are changing. So when you mention about impact and so forth, it's no different than what it was in the original plan. And it's very certain that any of the parking on the west zone and the south zone for that matter is all screened. Like the ones on the Lord and Taylor is screened with residential in front of it, and the residential is actually higher than the garage. So you won't even see a garage from the street. You won't even know it's there. So there'll be nothing that's going to impact, there's not the aesthetics of the town in that regard. So.
Mayor, can I just ask a question about the school study? Does that take into account that there's a large number of, because I understand if there's these 55 and over residents, you can run a study to figure out how many people are gonna come to the schools. But does it take into account the number of residents in Westfield that are 55 and over that own a house? that then go and buy those apartments, and now X amount, 50, I don't know how many houses then become available in
Yeah,
Westfield
it does.
itself.
And so if you go back and read because we met with the demographer for the schools, they just released their school projections, and we had a Zoom call with the guy himself to talk about it. So yes, and it's more of the development, residential development is driving school enrollment than apartments. And I told you, I keep a spreadsheet of every single unit, of everything that's built, and I ask the schools to give me every year the number of school-age students that are being delivered by those units. And I compare it to what the Rutgers projections are, and they're right on the money. So yes, it's, you can ask the schools, they are not concerned about enrollment impact of One Westfield Place, or quite frankly, any of the existing or proposed development.
Got it. Can I ask the experts one more question?
Sure.
I hear some concerns, and I guess when I search the news on Hudson Bay's financial situation, and again, this is about the amendment and not about our financials, but when we agreed to the initial agreement to now, a lot has changed. I believe in their financials and in the economy. So when they came back to the amendment, what type of reverse due diligence was done? Did we get access to their financials and how they've changed now versus when they proposed it? Was there any reverse due diligence done outside of just the plan actually on the partner themselves?
Well, there was a lot of, obviously originally, as you mentioned, there was a lot of due diligence. I know the mayor yourself, you spoke to other mayors where they've done projects and things like that. And Councilwoman Hapgood especially, I know, really dug into their financials in terms of what types of debt they have, in terms of outstanding loans, when they come due and things like that. So yeah, that's always been a part of the analysis. Maybe I missed it.
Was it part of when they came back to the amendment, right? We're re-looking at this thing. Did we ask for updated financials? I assume we looked at this when this project started, but this is multiple years later. So did we ask for updates of those due diligence items that we initially asked for before we said, let's go ahead with this amendment?
So when that phase comes, when the financial phase comes before you, you're going to have Mr. Jessup here from the Bond Council, as well as Nassau Capital Advisors, do a new study.
Their financials.
I'm sorry.
I just want to, so we'll talk about their financials. Okay.
Well, to the extent that it's reflected in the amendment and relevant to the amendment, if that's your question.
Well, yeah, I think I'm with you on this. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is they came back to the drawing board and said, we want to change this. And that has a few question marks up in the air. And my initial question would say, okay, well, do they want to change this for financial reasons? Do they want to change this because they're listening to residents? And my first question would be, are they in financial trouble? So I quickly did a Google search, and it seemed like it's not looking great, but I don't know. So my first question to them before this amendment comes in place would be can I see updated financials? Because it's been 4 years since we've seen them. Before we go into negotiation, can we just see updated financials that we haven't seen in 4 years? So are you saying that we didn't get updated financials, or that's coming? I'm not concerned about the town's financials. I'm concerned about their financials, which is why.
Yeah, no, I now understand your point. The answer that I can give you right now is no. For the redevelopment plan phase where we are right now, I have not asked for it. I don't know if anybody else in the town.
But would you agree that the partner that anytime we're going to restructure a deal multiple years later with the inkling, listen, I know they're saying they listened to the residents, and we can agree to disagree on that one. Anyone can Google search and say that there's a little bit of financial trouble here with any commercial real estate developer. It didn't spur anyone here to ask a question, hey, should we ask for some reverse due diligence and just see how they are financially before we just agree to this fire alarm that they're setting off?
Well, again, from my opinion, the changes to the finance, and again, I know we're talking financials, but I want to address your question. The changes that have been proposed that will eventually come before this council, if we get that far, are more protective to the town. So it wasn't that they were coming to us and asking to loosen any financial obligations that they had or create more risk on the town. In fact, I think the professional team has agreed that what they're asking for and what they're agreeing to now is helping reduce the risk to the town.
Yeah.
No, I don't think the question has been asked, do we have that concern that we have to go down that road, because what the changes are actually helping the town's financial risk.
I see that. I guess
position.
With any amount of LLCs and the amount of money that they have, they'll beat us in any lawsuit no matter what. So they can be protected as much as they want. The truth is they hold all the power. I guess it just rings fire alarm. It rings bells to me that why are they coming to us to make these changes? A developer that wants to make a bunch of money, they might be in financial trouble. It just strikes me as odd as we wouldn't ask them for their financials.
I don't, and I respect that. I don't necessarily agree, because the changes that were requested were all planning based on their prospective tenant, which is far enough along that they're willing to make this request and pay all of us to analyze that and make changes for planning purposes. The financial changes came from us trying to improve the town's perspective, not from them offering those sorts of things. So the changes that they came to us with were not, hey, we want to do X, Y, and Z to make the project cheaper. In that case, I would certainly follow that thought process. It was, we want to get this a tenant in there, whoever they are, and these are the requests they made. And you heard Mr. Adams last time, 2 weeks ago, say in addition, they're working with potential residential partner who's also weighed in on some of those things. So the requests that were made didn't really, to me, and Matt Jeff's not here because this isn't a financial public hearing, and if he was, I'm sure he'd give further comment. But to me, they didn't ring that we needed to reanalyze those sorts of things. But with respect to now that the proposed pilot is changing, the proposed bonds are changing, the revenues are changing, as well as the public improvement costs are changing, certainly there is an analysis that will go into that and be a presentation to them, to you all when the financials come up.
So you don't think their costs are decreasing on this project?
I certainly do.
Right.
But that wasn't
So, I'm sorry, can I just interject?
getting-
Can we, we're getting way off track.
I
This
agree.
will absolutely be a conversation for the finance committee, and I think it's definitely worthwhile having in the public. I understand, but I think that, again, what we're addressing tonight is specific to this amendment, and it doesn't even involve this agreement. Streetworks isn't even engaged in this particular ordinance that we're voting on tonight. So, I'm sorry, anybody else? Yes? No, so. What's that? I thought I answered all of them. Oh, I'm sorry, the 5-foot setback. You asked me about I'm sorry, I took poor notes. I'm sorry, I took poor notes.
Yeah.
The sewer easement.
Yeah, the sewer easement.
Yeah.
Okay? The bit about 16 to 18 going back to 16 because of the 5-foot setback, okay? Had nothing to do with.
I'm sorry, got it.
Had nothing to do with impervious surface. I want to thank Mr. Jardine for reminding us all that the existing parking lot is 100% versus what we're going to get is going to be 75%.
Okay, I got it. So the sewer.
Thanks, Tom. I didn't realize that you were a civil engineer as well as a traffic
I'm sorry,
engineer.
I can't speak to the sewer easement. Don, do you know about the sewer easement? Jim, do you know anything about the sewer easement?
Anybody know about the sewer easement? Okay. So we got the sewer easement.
I'm sorry, I was asking him
flat
to address it.
Okay.
And
The flat roofs
the 5-foot,
and the setback.
the flat roofs, I said, will be addressed at site plan review with the planning board. I did address that. So, yes.
I think the remaining questions, the setback to the residential properties that front on Charles, don't change.
The setbacks from Charles.
Correct.
I think he's referring to the one on the Bank of America side.
Bank of America changes.
No, the other side, Bob Newell's old house.
Bob Newell's house doesn't change. Bob Newell's house is lot 15. 15 foot. There's a greater setback of 15 foot in that table on the plan. So I'd use the 15 foot.
It's 15 foot, the one you're referencing is 15 foot.
I know exactly what.
Hey, Don, if you go to page 40 of the plan.
Yep.
I think this is maybe what you're referring to. On page 40 of the plan, it talks about a setback minimum yard being reduced from 12 foot to 5 foot. That might be.
Yeah, page 40. So the building setbacks principal structures table that we're looking at.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so the fourth row in that table, minimum yard is measured from block 2502, lots 2, 3, and 15. It's 15 foot.
I can tell you the version I read had a setback being reduced from 12 foot to 5 foot.
Yeah, there may be 2 listed in there. I will always go with the maximum, more restrictive requirement.
Okay.
Do you know about the sewer easement?
Sewer easement is there, and I believe there's a break between the townhome buildings. I'm not sure if it lines up exactly with the sewer easement, but if the engineer says you can't build over the easement, you can't build over the easement, and that would be permanent structures. Things like parking lots, surface parking lots may be permitted, but there would have to be some sort of agreement that if the entity responsible for maintaining that needs to get in there and do the work, they're going to do it, and they're going to need access.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Good evening, Bob Saunders, 97 Barchester. I've got to tell you, I like most of this project, but I also have some concerns. I'd like to ask about 3 of them regarding the application today. I was surprised to just learn that the actual size of the aggregate building, regardless of what the components are, might not be 25% smaller, but might in fact be 16% larger. I'm wondering if anyone here is also surprised by that. If someone is surprised by it, I'm not sure how you can vote on it without knowing that answer. Your expert didn't even know that answer or consider it. To me, size matters. I think that's a very big concern for most people. And however the project is used, the size matters. I'm not sure how you can vote on something not knowing if it's 25% smaller or 16% bigger. That seems reckless to me and a violation of your fiduciary duty to the people that you're representing. So my question is, how would you defend voting on something that you don't know what you're voting on? Question 2. If in fact, proposal 1, is smaller than proposal 2, and if you liked project 1, and if project 1 brings in more revenue, it would only seem reasonable that everybody here, based on what the mayor said, we're voting on this. If it doesn't go through, then we're stuck with the bigger one. It would seem to me people against the project would vote no, and people for the project would vote no. They would go for the smaller building that they originally liked, that generated more revenue. So I'm not sure how, knowing those factors, and especially without knowing the size, if one's bigger or one's smaller, why anyone would vote yes to this. I would vote no to get the original smaller project. My third question is about the traffic study. Look, I'm an accountant. People ask for my advice all the time. They say, Bob, I want to make sure you know what you're doing. What's 2 plus 2? I think everyone knows the answer. What would you like it to be? I've lived in town 50 years. I've probably heard 1,000 traffic studies. Our project is going to reduce traffic every single time. Yet what do you guys do at virtually every meeting? We need another 4-way stop. We need another light. Traffic department. How do you put together every traffic study in the past saying it's going to get better, and we know it hasn't, it's only gotten worse, but now suddenly this traffic study is right? That makes no sense to me. How do we rely on this traffic study? So again, my 3 questions are, how would you defend yourself from voting on something that you don't know? One of the most important attributes are, why wouldn't you vote no if this first project is smaller, more profitable, and you liked it? And number 3, what makes this traffic study any different than the hundreds of others that obviously haven't been correct? Thank you.
Well, I will just talk about the traffic for a minute. We've never said this is reducing traffic. We said it's going to improve traffic flow, and there's a difference. And I'll just reiterate what I said earlier, is that the opportunity to make improvements at 10 intersections pretty much simultaneously within a couple years is not possible in a standard municipality. And right now, if you go and put in one traffic light, but don't make improvements elsewhere, you don't really see a material benefit from that, because we all know one traffic light impacts the other. So with the technology of the lights at these 10 improvements at these 10 intersections, it improves traffic flow by being able to have cameras on the lights that will detect if somebody is actually at an intersection. If not's there, it's green. If someone's there, it stops. So the traffic flow in the morning during school period is going to be different than the traffic flow maybe at 11 in the morning on a weekday. So we're not saying it's going to reduce traffic. We're going to say we finally are going to have the ability to improve infrastructure to actually improve traffic flow. And you are right, traffic's terrible today. And guess what? That's not going to change. And it's definitely not going to improve if we don't make investments necessary to mitigate it. So no one is saying it's reducing traffic. The traffic study that we've done ad nauseum basically says, if you do these improvements to the intersection, what will it do to improve traffic flow? And that's a big material difference. And regarding the buildings, I think I'm amused, quite frankly, that it's smaller or bigger or so forth. This is what it does. And I don't agree with the assessment on the 25 and the 16, because there's parking you include and there's parking you don't. You can actually make it say, as you have done, what you want. But I do believe what this does is what we've heard all along. And you know what it is? We want to reduce height. We've done that. We want to reduce traffic, and the way you do that is by reducing activated space, and we've done that. So you could say, twist the words and say, oh, it's a smaller project and it's bigger and whatever you want. But fundamentally, it addresses specifically the things that we heard from residents, and that was height, bulk, and traffic.
John Marcos, 543 Arlington Avenue. There's been a lot of opposition to OWP for lots of good reasons, many more than just size. The thing has many flaws. First of all, the amendments don't go far enough. The amendments should be revised so that they reduce the size even more. People don't like the size of the project. The amendments don't go far enough. Second of all, the process is flawed. It is hard to believe that people would vote for this amended plan or for the agreement without full financials, full vetting, full disclosure, traffic studies, and parking studies. You're putting the cart before the horse. The public needs information, and you need information to make informed decisions. There's no good reason to rush this through. These are important issues and will change the town, and this needs to be done in a deliberate process with full information and not traffic studies 6 months from now or 12 months from now and financials that haven't been disclosed. Finally, the town leaders have the obligations to comply with the results of the recent decisive elections. The voters clearly and loudly expressed their opposition to OWP, overdevelopment, urbanization, and mandated projects by the state. People want projects to be done on a bipartisan basis so they're done properly and not on a one-party basis. We deserve better than this project. We have always deserved better than this project. This project has been flawed from the very beginning. Too much, too big, too urban, and just wrong for the town. Thanks very much.
Anybody else? Yes. Oh, all right.
Good day, Morgan O'Brien, 438 St. Mark's Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey.
I'm sorry, state your name again.
Morgan O'Brien, 438 St. Mark's Avenue, Westfield, New Jersey. I'm just following up from the questions that have been asked before. And I just needed some clarity. You've stated that you renegotiated with Streetworks or Hudson Bay to create, let's say, this smaller project. So why is it that it must be approved this early? Is there an overriding statute in New Jersey that says because you did this, this has to be done this rapidly? Just as the prior speaker said, you know, why isn't more deliberation done on this project, which I know some of the council people wish would happen? So is it that you believe, or whoever it is who negotiated with Streetworks or Hudson Bay, that you have to get the approval or you lose credibility with Hudson Bay and you've got to move the project forward? What's the motivation? What is creating the need to accelerate the vote?
An interested tenant. That's what's driving the request from Streetworks.
Who's an interested tenant?
The tenant that Hudson's Bay Streetworks is talking to for their property in the West Zone.
Yeah, so you guys are motivated to push this through more rapidly. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Well, yes,
I would say
because we
yes.
have
Yeah,
a,
okay,
because
so that's all I needed to understand. Okay, so you don't believe that because this is a significant change, you know, a document of 185 pages was dropped to the public today at 5 p.m., or at least I saw it at 5 p.m.
Which document was that?
I don't
which
know.
document are you talking about?
The proposed plan project.
Oh, that was a drop 3
No,
weeks
that was
ago.
3 weeks ago, redlined.
Yeah.
The redlined you can get through in a half an hour.
185 pages.
Yeah,
Okay.
but there's very few
Lot of
red lines.
material.
The
But let's not
docu-
insult how long it takes him to read the
Okay, well,
document.
the
Let's just get to
document, the document has been available to the public for 2 years or longer. I don't know, Don, when was
The
the RDP
revised
originally
document?
approved? The RDP was originally approved when?
Revised document.
No, when was the, I'm sorry, I'm
Well, I
asking
don't know
Mr.
what-
Salmon a question.
I know, I only saw it 3 hours ago. Go ahead.
Right,
So
so
revised
the
plan-
only changes that are being made to that document, Mr. O'Brien,
Yeah.
are the red lines.
Okay. I
Okay,
saw-
and it's very easy to go through and review the red lines. There weren't significant changes to the document. It is a long document, I agree,
Okay.
but it's been out there for a long time. And the red lines have been available for more than 3 weeks.
For more than 3 weeks, okay.
Yes.
All right, my
Okay.
neglect. Okay, so it is the town itself that is motivated and wants to get this,
Yes.
Completed.
Because, right, because this project, even reduced in size, has the ability to deliver $156 million to us over 30 years.
we'll talk about that in the second session, I guess, correct? Well, you talk about financials can be reviewed.
But-
You can come back and talk about financials in the
Yeah.
second part if you'd
All
like.
right.
Or
Okay.
you could wait till that presentation to
Right.
the council in subsequent months, weeks.
Well, there's plenty of material out
Yes,
there.
got it. Thank
But
you.
the project has been delayed for a year already due to lawsuits, and now we have a tenant, and I think it would benefit the developer to be able to talk to a real live tenant and advance that process. And they can't continue discussions with a tenant with zoning that doesn't adhere to what they need on the property.
Yeah.
So that's my answer to your question.
Okay, so
Okay?
then the council members that don't agree with the acceleration, it's a vote.
We'll find out we'll find out how the council is going to vote in a couple of minutes, I guess, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Panikiewski, 233 Charles Street. I'm very concerned about the townhouses. My first question is, whose idea was it to make them not age-restricted? The town?
I'm sorry,
Whose idea was it to make them non-age restricted? Oh, it's not on? Okay. Whose idea was it to make those townhouses non-age restricted?
That was part of the negotiation of our team of professionals,
okay.
so.
Was it your idea? Was it One Westfield Places? Because my issue is now flat roofs with children on them. It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. Teenagers, toddlers, there's not going to be adults supervising them if there's rooftop access. This is our chance for gabled roofs, which would go so much better with our neighborhood. And another question is, where is this traffic study on the website? It's One Westfield Place, and then where's the town's traffic study? Maybe you could point that out on the.
If you'd like, I can send it to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. That would be great. And the dog park, it doesn't belong in a neighborhood. There's no neighborhood dog parks. They're all in parks. In this area, if there's a dog park, it's in a park. It doesn't belong in single family and the townhouses. It doesn't belong there. Maybe you should move it to the town green. It doesn't belong there. And I don't think you should rubber stamp these revisions without negotiating a better deal for the residents of Westfield. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, if you could send an email to me so that I can respond to you, because I don't have your email address. Mine's on the website.
Anybody else? No, sorry, you can come to public comment. Sorry.
Hi, Michael Blancato, 18 Carroll Road, Westfield, New Jersey. I think what I've been hearing, and I wasn't really going to say anything tonight, that's a perfect example. People have questions, it needs to be a dialogue. It can't be somebody coming up here and just saying, hey, this is the part of the amendment. What I don't like about the amendment, and I spoke to Councilman Contract when I was vehemently opposed to it to begin with, things aren't really going to change. We voted yes, and this is the way it's going to be. And I look at the red lines. 3 weeks isn't a lot of time, by the way. I know you can read through it quickly, but to redigest what was voted on 2 years ago and try and come back, the bottom line is all the people here were concerned 2 years ago. The bottom line for this amendment, if we can make changes, let's make even more changes. The South Avenue street, I tried figuring out if there's cars still going to be there or not. There was a proposal for cars. When I went to the One Westfield Place site, there's supposed to be parking. You're going to go from 2 lanes to 1 lane there. Is that still part of it? I couldn't figure it out tonight or the other day when I was looking at this. So that's one. So it should be a dialogue. It should be, here's what we're talking about. When they talk about setbacks, if they're really that concerned, it needs to be a dialogue. So here's my questions. One, why can't we make this more of a dialogue for this amendment? If they are amending it, Councilman Contract, 2 years ago, you told me it's never going to get amended. And I said every single real estate, because I was in real estate for years, and I'm still in real estate a little bit. Every single contract gets amended over and over and over. And I said, so the next time we come to this board and they present their financials and where they're going, and they shrink it because at the time COVID and commercial real estate, and I'm purposely looking at you because you said straight out to me, never going to change. Well, it is changing. So let's look and really look at it again and look at all the concerned individuals for this amendment and really reduce it, really make an impact for the future, for the benefit of the town, including look at Hudson Bay's financials, including at the overall financials. Because my big issue at the time with the pilot, payment in lieu of other taxes, would be that the tenants, the retail tenants that are there, are getting a benefit over the current tenants that are in town, because most leases are triple net leases, which means somebody who's been in a business in the center of town 4 years is paying their landlord the taxes that are in Westfield. Yet somebody brand new that's coming in is paying less in real estate taxes. There's something wrong with this whole equation. So with this amendment, this is our opportunity to really revisit it. And 3 weeks isn't a lot of time for the red lines. So my second question is, why can't we delay it and have a true dialogue on the amendment and look at all the pieces, including the financials? Thank you.
Yeah. No, no, not yet.
Just allow me 773 Clark Street. I just need 2 points of clarification. I think you answered it, but I'm not sure. On the office building change on the South Avenue side, did the town request it or did Streetworks request it?
The town requested that.
Okay. What happens to this, with this ordinance tonight, if you don't like the financials when they're done?
Well, we've done, I mean, you saw a financial presentation 2 weeks ago. We've done enough of the due diligence to understand. I mean, our professionals, you have to negotiate a deal that's going to make sense, right? So all the larger financials to make sure that the pilot stays the same and the money and we can pay and the bonding and the backstop.
So in other words, you have all that information.
Well, I think
you're just not willing to share it.
No, that's not what I said.
Sounded like it to me.
I said there is another level of diligence that basically reaffirms all the assumptions that our first layer professional has made. That's what's being done right now.
So to come up with the $156 million proposed pilot amount, somebody had to figure out what the rents were going to be.
Correct.
Project them. So you have all that information.
Not yet. I mean, we do. That's what, but it's being verified.
You're just not willing to share it yet.
Not yet. It will be shared, but by the way, this is what are your comments about the amendment? You're talking financials. What are your comments about the amendment?
I didn't want to, but the amendment directly impacts the financials because of the rents that are going to be proposed and
well, when we have the financial conversation, you should come back and raise those concerns.
I will.
I'm sure you will. Thank you.
I just got a comment. For me, nothing particularly profound to say in this particular case. I still do not like the way South Ave is being situated. I still do not like the height of the buildings, and I sound like the cat in the hat.
I missed that you still like what?
Do not like the height of the buildings.
Oh, the height.
And like I said, I sound like the cat in the hat, the I do not like list. What I am confused about is the perception portion of this conversation. If I put on a dark suit in the morning, it does not make me weigh less, though it may make me look thinner. I think the size is what the size is. The density is pretty much the same, if not larger. So I don't quite get the visual concept because it looks smaller and it is smaller. So I do have a big problem with that. There are other things that I will talk about, I guess probably more finance related, but as far as aesthetics, construction, size, traffic, these are all still worries for me in the third ward and on the south side. And I can't understand quite yet what I'm voting for either way tonight, because it seems like it could be voting for the exact same thing either way. I don't know. We'll see.
So are there any other comments from the public?
Can you answer my question about South Avenue?
About I'm sorry, remind me, Michael, what it was.
So the one that I really am concerned about is the parking that's going to be closing one lane of South Avenue.
About what they call the traffic diet? Yeah, I think that is definitely contemplated. I mean, it was recommended in the master plan, and that's really what drove that, is because trying to reduce the speed of traffic, as you all know, we've had issues in terms of the crossover to Boulevard, so anything that you can do to reduce the speed of traffic is a good thing. So that was recommended by the master plan, and that's why it's reflected in this plan. So I'm sorry, Jim's gonna.
Just to enhance that a little bit, that's correct, and it's still being looked at by the DOT, because the other thing that Councilman's contracts brought up as well for Ward 3 is what we don't want is queuing.
Correct.
People making a left onto Boulevard and having it, and someone can't pass by them, so that's another thing. So the DOT, because that's a state, or actually that's a county road in that area, but it affects the state road on the further down the line. Both state DOT and county are looking at that, and that's part of the due diligence that's happening now on the traffic study, which will be reviewed by our professional, and then obviously if it gets that far, in front of the planning board for site plan approval.
But I hear you, Michael. We don't want to create unintended consequences of that, and that will be.
I know I'm not supposed to ask a second question, but then the point was that that time was those parking spaces were added in order to make the number of parking spaces equivalent. So if we get rid of
It could be configured. I think the biggest concern, honestly, who might be impacted from that is the retail, especially the existing South Avenue businesses. And that is absolutely a consideration in terms of how we do it. We're very well aware of that. So.
But I don't think those parking spaces are, the commuter parking's replaced
Yeah,
one-to-one.
they
So
were never
those
about commuter.
10 or so spaces on South are not, they're not affecting the replacement. I mean, I have grave concerns about changing South Avenue going west from 2 lanes to 1. I mean, I had a separate meeting with John Federico from WSP. I'm very worried about the queuing, and I'm glad the state's looking at it because I think they share those concerns.
Yes, we don't want to do that. Because that could create, understandably, bigger issues. Okay, so with that, this hearing is closed, and Councilman Contract, please move for the adoption of General Ordinance number 2024-24.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance number 2024-24, an ordinance adopting an amendment to the Lord and Taylor Train Station Redevelopment Plan.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Healy. Any discussion? Councilman Healy.
There are many ways to skin a cat. At the present time, there is a plan that's been approved by the council and moved forward. That's one way to skin a cat. Now there's another way to skin a cat. And it's a slight reduction in the actual occupied space, not the parking spaces, not the parking decks, but the actual residential or commercial space, 25% reduction. That's not in dispute. Let's not pretend it is. Councilman Saunders, I read his letter saying, why don't we put a request out for proposal on the South Avenue side? That's another way to skin a cat. I appreciate that. As many comments have made, there's many different ways to go through this. And if you pull out one little slant here and the whole thing goes down. I connect this project to our obligation to have meaningful housing diversity that will allow our zoning ordinance to be enforceable and constitutional. That's a really critical thing. A lot of municipalities are putting their heads in the sand on this. And I get the emails, believe me, I've seen the emails. Overwhelmingly, I get the impression that what people are concerned about when they object to this One Westfield plan is, we don't like these new apartment buildings. We don't like what we see on North Avenue and South Avenue. We don't like that. Those were part of Westfield's effort to meet our obligations to have an enforceable zoning code. They were started under an excellent mayor who served the longest mayor term in Westfield history, Andy Skibitsky, with the assistance of a councilman, Jim First, who realized that Westfield was sitting ducks to builders' remedy lawsuits that could go and break up any single-family neighborhood in Westfield. And that's what we don't want to do. We want a zoning ordinance that's enforceable. The One Westfield plan, overall plan, really helps us do this and show that we have a true plan that we won't get busted by builders' remedy lawsuits. To me, the opposition that I've heard is so reminiscent of the no ShopRite game that was played in the 1990s when I actually was on the council. The lawn signs went up, no ShopRite. And unfortunately, the majority party used improperly the zoning ordinance to deny them, even though ShopRite had 0 variances. They even tried to come to the town council and change the zone while ShopRite was in process of applying in the planning, before the planning board. They gave ShopRite they had ShopRite do 64 hearings, and then they denied, that is to say, the planning board of Westfield denied an application on the railroad tracks that had no variances. ShopRite took an appeal. And then Garwood stepped in and said, we'd welcome you. Please come to Garwood. So move the site 200 yards, and now the Garwood ShopRite exists. Westfield has lost millions of dollars in tax revenue because of short-sightedness. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that very honest council people and mayors made, in my observation, in town. So again, yard signs and stirring up things, that's fine, that's democracy. But in the long run, you have to take a look at the long run. We need an enforceable zoning plan, which One Westfield plan is part of that. Now, the opponents to the plan, they've already got a lawsuit going. They lost at the trial level. They're going. I don't want to second guess what the appellate division does. I've certainly been wrong about what the appellate division does in my own cases. Maybe that'll win. And if it does win, we're back to square one. There's no plan. There's back to Lord and Taylor getting to do whatever they want on their property, assuming it gets approved. And you know, do I think it's going to win? I don't think it's going to win. But in addition to that effort to stop the One Westfield plan, they still want the town council to delay, continue. I know what a filibuster is. I've been around. I know what a filibuster is. The effort to say we need more time. It's a filibuster to stop the progress of this happening. Now, when I served on this town council for 11 years, a long time ago, in the 1980s and 1990s, we didn't have such a thing as social media. And this is a new development for me, so I'm getting hit with emails today. Social media says, here's the email that he's got. So now you can email him. So that's a new thing. And it's also, what's new about it is the misinformation, the information overload. What Steve Bannon, that great convicted criminal, calls flood the zone. And that's what's being happened. The zone is being flooded of information, misinformation, often disinformation. I have this question. Who in Westfield has lost property values in the last 5 years? None. Westfield continues to be a vibrant plan. The One Westfield plan has been in existence for now a number of years. We're making a slight proposed amendment to reduce the occupied space by 25%. Who's lost property values? I just keep being astounded. And by the way, the mayor's been here for 7 years. Who's lost property values while she's been mayor and some of the other council members? So for all those reasons, I'm supportive of the amendment. I was supportive of the first plan. This is a slight change, alteration. I'm in favor of it.
Do we just? No, I was going to say we just got the line.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple things just because it's getting late. I think it's just what I've gotten a couple of emails. I didn't hear from a lot of Ward 3 residents. Frankly, it kind of reminds me of where we were, a year and a half ago, where it was, half in favor, half not. It's basically what it's been. I think what I've told every single one is, we need to focus on what the choice is in front of the council and not the what ifs. The choice in front of us tonight is, do we like the revisions to the amended plan or not? To me, I think lowering building heights, reducing traffic on the south side, reducing sort of the massing on the west zone against the neighborhood, the decrease in occupied square footage that my colleague to my right said, I think those are all benefits to the town, right? It makes the plan better, right? No plan's perfect. I said it before, a year and a half ago, that plan wasn't perfect. But it was in the town's best interest to protect and strengthen the economic vitality of our downtown by bringing foot traffic in, 7-day-a-week demand, which we desperately need. I actually think this plan has probably helped support the huge resurgence in new businesses we've seen in our downtown over the last few years. That when we ran 7 years ago or 8 years ago, whatever, we were talking about vacancies. I haven't heard that word in a long time in this town. And there's a reason for it, right? This plan brings a ton of extra money to this town. that we desperately need to make the improvements that we want to make sitting on the finance committee, and we don't want your taxes to go up. I'm proud of our tax record. Our rate of increase is about 50% below the prior administration, right? That's meaningful to you, and I hear a lot about that, right? So the $42 million, I think that's the right number of capital improvements that this project fully funds, and Streetworks backstops, so it's virtually free to the town. It's incredibly meaningful. So it's not just the 10 intersections, it's the greens on both sides, right? You know, it's the garages, right? That does provide incremental parking at night and on weekends. So I think this plan is better. It's not perfect. I do agree with the mayor, and I said it a year and a half ago, that it does bring extra traffic, but the reality is, if you want to support the downtown, you have to accept more traffic, right? Because we are still a car-driven economy. This plan supports more biking, more pedestrian, more walking. But the reality is, Westfielders like to drive. It's probably not going to, don't interrupt, please. So that's why I'm supporting it. I do think it's in the town's best interest. I think this plan is better. It's not perfect. And I already said earlier, I'm going to continue to fight for improvements to it, particularly along the South Avenue corridor. But that's why I'm voting yes. Sorry, Councilman. I just wanted to finish.
No, that's fine. I'll go ahead and go. So I believe it's become more apparent that the new council members here, their request for a smaller project probably came to fruition. I don't necessarily believe that you like this project more, or that you would have wanted to change the previous project to be smaller. I'm just calling you out on that. I just don't see how it's possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't have voted yes the first time. You would have pushed for something smaller, and you didn't do that in front of the public and the residents. I also believe that HBC is insufficiently backed to complete the project at the original size, and I'm not so sure they can complete it at this size. At the very least, I feel that it's disingenuous to claim that those that voted for the project at the original size and hold it as a threat to us. And you claim to like both projects, so playing both sides, I think, is a problem. Or to say that we would go back to the original plans, and that would be a reasonable step. I don't think anybody is going to go ahead and agree with that. If anybody's checked today's news, Saks canceled their New York City lighting. It makes you question why. The people that partner with HBC, who own Saks, potentially do not want to go ahead and front the money to go ahead and make that happen. They are not paying vendors. There are a list of problems where they're not actually taking care of maintenance on their buildings. I think it's plausible, potentially probable, that we will see this going forward. These are some of the reasons why I will vote no tonight. I respect all of the other decisions. I believe that there's a tie of love for the town on behalf of both sides. I think we all want essentially what's best for the town. I don't think the size, definitely on South Side, should be what it is. And I really do question the validity of the financials in the end. But that will come the next time we meet. I do still have questions. Thank you.
And by the way, the Saks holiday display is always sponsored by somebody, so it's not out of HBC's pocket, just so you know.
By someone like, say, MasterCard, who would go ahead and give them the millions of dollars to go ahead
No,
and
it's
do
typically,
that.
it's typically sponsored by
But somewhere
like
there's a payment
fashion
not
brand.
happening,
So,
and that's my
anyway,
problem.
just FYI. Point taken.
I speak, Mayor? So I guess before we go ahead and vote tonight, I just want to give a few comments, and I'll keep it short, considering I've said the same thing a few times. To me, this will all be about the process. Again, we're arguing building height, square feet, lower, usable space, not usable space. I just want to reiterate the same point I've reiterated 100 times. We did more of a process with more RFPs for a snack stand than we did for $400 million of a massive development in our town. Now, I want to get to the point of, I had a lot of residents ask me this, what would it take for me to say yes, to vote yes for this? And there are a few things that would take for me to say yes to this, because I do like parts of this. I'll go with the first personal ask. we got to stop insulting the intelligence of the council and the residents that this is a, because you listen to the residents and we negotiate together. This is a purely financial decision, and I just want to stop insulting people by having that conversation. The two other concrete things we could do is we could do a full RFP process, and we could give more than 3 weeks for people to read the document, go through it, get their questions answered. I don't know if we have to open a full preview center. I think someone a few weeks ago said open up a room here and talk about it. I think those would be good. So I want to end, I guess, with this. I'm willing to say yes to this because I like parts of it. And I would ask, as Councilman Healy said, there's multiple ways to skin a cat. Well, I have a way to skin the cat where we could all vote together. If you're willing to postpone this vote and give us a chance to run a full RFP process, I don't know how long it takes, 3 or 6 months, and HBC comes back as the best one, I'm willing to vote yes. So if you're willing to skin that cat with me, Councilman Healy, you have my second. I'm willing to postpone this. I'm willing to run the RFP, and if they come back the winner, we can break bread together and do this across party lines. So that's my offer, and that's how I'm willing to vote yes.
Yeah, so I got a couple things to say before the vote. First, I want to remind everyone how we got here. In April, we did meet with Streetworks. We gave them a lot of feedback. I asked them directly, I asked Doug straight to his face, are you still planning on going ahead with the commercial office space as planned in light of the new market conditions? He said yes. Then, when he came here on October 22nd, I reminded him of that conversation, and I said, well, when did you change your mind? I asked you in April if you were going to go forward, and you changed your mind. What happened? He said, well, in June. That in June, they came back and said to the town they wanted to redo the deal. So, point one, Streetworks came to us because they can't do the deal as planned. Full stop, fact. All right? They came to us to renegotiate. I was surprised to learn today from the mayor that she thinks the impetus was the Lord and Taylor tenant having certain demands. And I don't doubt her, I'm sure it's true. But it is also true that they could not get commercial tenants for that 200,000 square foot of office space. And that's common sense, folks, because I got news for you. If they could, they would have. They're not going to say, oh, really, your town doesn't like that? And we got all 200,000 anchor tenants for decades for 200,000 square foot office space? No. So my point in making this point, the reason I say that, is because they came to us and wanted to negotiate a deal that we had inked. That's leverage for us. I would have squeezed them harder. I'll just say it like that. In my perfect world, we would have got a lot more out of them. And when we talk about skinning the cat, I'll give you the layers of skin that I just can't deal with on my cat are that 55-foot tower parking garage on the north zone and the 65-foot tall building on the south side. To me, those are things I just can't get over. So when we talk about what we can deal with, I can't deal with that. That's just me. People are different. But that's where I would have pushed. And I would have, called their bluff and made them redo the deal. We didn't have that option. What the council has here today before them today is a take it or leave it proposition. That's the fact. So all these things that you've talked about, whether they're true or not, we can't do anything about it. We don't have a line item veto to say, you know what, I want that 5 foot to go back to 12 foot on the offset for the sidewalk. It's just not how it works. So with a take it or leave it proposition like this, I gotta leave it. So I'm leaving this cat with the skin on its back, or whatever analogy we want to use, I gotta leave it. I want to point out a couple other things though. What we are getting with this amended project is a heck of a lot more parking above ground. So before it was underground. Why is that happening? It's a cost-cutting measure, and I challenge anybody to tell me that there's a different reason for it to be happening. So aesthetic-wise, to me, that's also a net negative in the amendment. Parking above ground is ugly. All right? So put aside the fact that we have the parking garages, on the parking garage that's going to go up on the north corridor especially. It's going to empty out into the busiest corridor in town, north and central. I am not going to park there when I commute to New York. I'm going to now ride my bike. People can do what they want, but that's just me. Now, the other parking that's going on the South Avenue, I just think it's an eyesore, and that's all above ground now. There's something to think about. Traffic is what it is, and Councilwoman Habgood, You guys are 100% right, and these guys work hard, by the way, my colleagues here, the two of them. I know them well from the Finance Committee. And when they say they're going to stay on top of the traffic, I believe them, and they will. The only problem is, once we greenlight this project, we're nibbling around the edges, right? We're polishing the decks of the Titanic. Once you inject all of these people coming in from the commercial office space, from the Quickie Med place by Lord and Taylor, people coming in and out, there's only so much we're going to be able to do. So I'll be there every step of the way to try to mitigate it, but it really is just that, it's mitigation. So I just want to point that out. Now, a couple points that were also brought up. Affordable housing. We're getting a total of 40 units by my calculation. If I'm wrong, Don will correct me. 34 units on the Lord and Taylor spot, and then I guess an additional 6 units by the North zone. And which is good, and we're going to need it, because we got about 397 units we have to do over the next 10 years, so this is good. I just want to point out, though, that we're getting no units from the South Avenue development. That's all commercial. So we didn't need to do that part to get additional affordable housing units, so just something to think about. And Councilman Healy is 1,000% right. This is a serious business, and we really have to take it serious, and we want to get ahead of it, and we don't want builders remedies lawsuits on our town. There's no way. But you could also make the point that maybe if we're going to skin our cat now that we know what the obligation is moving forward over the next 10 years, we can holistically look at a plan to really deal with it. Because one thing that's off the table now is that South Avenue parking lot, right? Because that's all commercial. So moving forward, we know there's not going to be affordable housing over there. Just an observation. So finally, I just want to say something. This is just from me to constituents. Like David, I got a lot of emails. And I'd say, just like him, it's probably split down the middle in terms of pro and con. I also, like you, noticed got a lot of emails from people outside my ward. That's great. I love hearing from everybody. So I want everyone to know I responded to everyone, I think. And people who told me, hey, we want you to know that we are in favor of this. I hear you. And I fully understand that I don't have some ownership of opinion here on what I think the entire town wants. I understand the town's split on this. I heard you, I take it into consideration, and I hope you understand that. For people who thought that I just vote on political grounds, I know a couple people made that observation. I can only prove to you through my actions and my words what I believe in, what I can do. But keep in mind, I, like the other new members on council, did run on a campaign against One Westfield Place, and we got elected because of it. So please don't be too surprised at some of the things we're saying. This is what we're here for. So finally, I'll just say, I think everyone knows how the vote's going to shake out, and just because the people who are against it don't have the votes, doesn't mean we don't have our voices. So we're going to continue to question and challenge every step of the way, and that only benefits the town and the project overall. Okay? Thanks.
First, Councilman Hapgood, I want to clarify something. I did review the 2023 traffic study. You had indicated last month that there would be an updated traffic study when we met. I'm still waiting for that. So I just want to clarify that. I did review the old traffic study. I'm looking for the new traffic study. Councilman Healy, I appreciate your experience in the town of Westfield, but I think comparing ShopRite to One Westfield Place is very incongruent. And as Councilman Kiefer mentioned, the South Side provides office space, not affordable housing. So I think it's important that we realize that. As Councilman Kiefer said, we were elected last year. We were elected by Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, not because of our party affiliation, because this town is very upset with One Westfield Place and the project. When I was sitting on that side, I sat and listened to many residents provide many good reasons why we should not pursue this project or why it should be amended. The town council at that time ignored everybody. It was rubber stamped, just like this is going to be rubber stamped. It was rubber stamped to the planning board. But this is not a party issue. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's people who are for reasonable redevelopment, and we're not saying no redevelopment, reasonable redevelopment versus overdevelopment. And there's an opinion there. You can think this One Westfield Place is reasonable. A lot of us think it's not reasonable. So I think, it's not a Republican-Democrat issue. It's a Westfield issue. Unfortunately, there is a lot of people in town that are very upset about this. I received a lot of emails. I would say the majority of them were telling me, vote no on this. People were very upset about this whole project. Even though this is an amendment, they're still upset about the whole project. I think as one of the other councilmen said it was disingenuous and it's insulting to tell me that this project was changed because you were listening to the town residents. If you were listening to the residents a year and a half ago when there was a 2,300 person survey, when people sat here for hours saying they were unhappy with this, and your response was, well, we've gotten some email support of the project, that's when the change should have occurred. It definitely was financial, and I would agree with Councilman Damagallo that that's the only reason why it was done. You can tell me otherwise, but I don't believe that. Also, I would ask the mayor, she mentioned in February of this past year that they were talking about changing it. Well, why wasn't the town council informed of this at all? Is this not a town council that should know what's going on? That meeting, and I will vehemently disagree with the mayor, was not intended to give us an opportunity to provide changes to One Westfield Place. We were being told what One Westfield Place was. That's what I was told. I wasn't told that my input had any effect. And as Councilman Keeper said, the change didn't occur till June, so our meeting definitely had no effect. So, and if there was to have an effect, why wasn't there a follow-up meeting? The mayor continues to say, let the experts do it. But no, they're not elected. We are elected. We should have the ability to have input. We represent you guys. I was elected to represent you guys, and I have girls, whoever, but my residents. I was elected to represent my constituents, and this is what I'm going to do. I was elected because I was against One Westfield Place. I'm against this amendment. This amendment gave us an opportunity to relook at the whole project. Why can't we just relook at the whole project? I know we have to rush it through, or you're going to rush it through because there's a tenant. Well, why can't we look at the other aspects of it? I think the majority of us, you know, the Lord and Taylor site is not so bad. We're not so adamantly against the Lord and Taylor site. It's the 65-foot office building on the South Side Street parking lot. That's ridiculous. It's changing the whole aspect of town. Multiple parking garages. The traffic, and you're right. So the traffic's going to get worse no matter what. You're going to mitigate it. You're still having more cars, so there's still going to be more traffic. Parking is worse. You're taking the spots by the Christmas tree and moving them. So the one area where there's parking that people can walk into the town is gone now. So you have to walk all the way to the end of, by Central and North. You have to park on the South Side train station parking lot. That's ridiculous. You were taking away areas that access the town, very closely. The other thing is, you're not helping, on the weekends, if you look at those parking lots, they're relatively empty, so you can park there, so you don't need a parking garage there. I think this is changing the whole aspect of Westfield. Again, we're not against everything, we're against part of it. And this was the chance, you could have sat down with us, and we could have looked at this process and had a transparent, open discussion, but you did not allow this. So I'm voting no for this, because it's ridiculous.
All right. So I know we've all been here a while. It's after 11:30 according to that clock. Just a bit of a story of how we got here, and it will mention the elephant in the room. Watching the strategic foresight other towns have shown, our administration realized early on that inertia was not a blueprint for maintaining a vibrant downtown. So during our first term, we set an intention to inject vitality and attract business to Westfield. Now we know that other towns have had spectacular success, boosting their economies and invigorating local stores and restaurants by attracting both new customers and encouraging residents to shop locally. Westfield, despite its beautiful downtown, was losing business to other places who saw the opportunity to create an attractive, appealing downtown of their own. Meanwhile, our largest store and tax base, Lord & Taylor, closed. This created a vacuum of space that would be difficult to fill with quaint, unique storefronts. Instead, because of the costs associated with this property, there was significant risk of the property being sold to a big box store. It also seemed unlikely that customers traveling into these large retailers would drive business to the existing local businesses, and it seemed far more likely to pull revenue from them. This is not what anyone wants for Westfield. The owners of Lord & Taylor had an outstanding record of beautifying towns just like ours. The council collaborated tirelessly with them to plan a future for Westfield that was as impressive and attractive as our past. Streetworks focused on maintaining the character and matching the charm while designing a plan to enhance revenue for them and for us. Throughout the planning, we solicited input from our most important stakeholders, our residents. The feedback from our neighbors and the new town council members was that the first design was a bit too much. That feedback was subsequently taken under advisement, and many adjustments have been made to the Streetworks plan, specifically based on those ideas and suggestions. However, as we have heard during our last town council meeting, and even now, it was apparently not good enough. Even after a substantial compromise, our colleagues shifted the goalposts, despite the understanding that a no vote means a return to the larger project design. Now you might wonder why. After these duly elected leaders received exactly what they wanted, they would refuse to accept the plans they wanted. It's not puzzling if you analyze motive. This is the elephant in the room. It is easier to criticize than to govern. It is easier to destroy than build. Bipartisanship has been replaced by intractable loyalty. Benefiting this party is more important, it seems, than benefiting the town. It's at this point I want to share something that I came across last week. When a government focuses on its core responsibilities and delivers on them quickly, efficiently, and with a laser focus on making sure people can go about their lives as normal, your constituents reward that. You don't need a grand vision, you just need to execute. So, if and when this project proceeds and we maintain a vibrant downtown which attracts businesses, shoppers, diners, and revenue, I ask everyone to remember who envisioned this, who championed this, who included the input from all stakeholders to promote this, and then who pretended to work in unity towards Westfield's success only to impede its execution even after getting the changes they claimed to want. Fellow town council members, we have an opportunity for enormous economic success. Let's work together to achieve this. Thank you.
I'd like to just say a couple of things. One of the reasons that I ran for this town council more than 7 years ago was because I felt like I could add something to this council from the financial work that I've done my whole career, working on a lot of projects around the world, not that dissimilar to this redevelopment project. I've spent a lot of time on this project leading up to the approval that happened in February of '23. It has been a fully evaluated project. We've got, as Mike said, we've gotten feedback along the way. This is an opportunity, of enormous financial opportunity for this town to bring new ratables in, bring significant new revenue dollars in, and significant investment in things that we cannot afford without projects like this. I'm a realist about this. You know, we can sit up here and fight about what happened when and why and how we're going to go forward with it, but at the end of the day, we have a developer who is under contract to do a deal with us, has asked for some reductions in what was originally proposed. You look at the, you know, what we're presented to us are the net impacts of it, and it still makes a ton of sense to me. We will never have $156 million of revenue coming in over 30 years, in addition to the new sequencing, the new public improvements, all of those things that will not happen through a new RFP to go out to put up for bid a parcel of land on South Avenue. It won't. I know that people want to believe that something like that can happen. There's no magical new project that's going to appear on South Avenue because we go out to RFP. We're approving tonight the changes in the redevelopment plan. We will spend time over the next couple of weeks looking at the financial information that will come in from our financial advisor that we don't have yet to affirm what we have been presented by Streetworks, the new plan will result in, and we will continue to talk about this. But this is an opportunity for Westfield to revitalize the downtown, to bring new dollars in, to make sure that the development that is going to happen happens inside of Westfield in a controlled fashion, and happens in a way that we want to have it happen. Otherwise, we let the development, to Jim's point about the ShopRite, happen next door, where they get the ratables and we get the traffic, and no traffic improvements to handle the increased traffic.
Thank you, and I am tired, as all of you are, so I'm not going to take up too much time, but there's a few things it's really important that I call out the members of the Downtown Westfield Corporation who are here. These are residents and business owners who have put their blood, sweat, and tears in our downtown, and they're here because they're supportive of this project, because they know what it's going to mean to their livelihoods, to our residents, and to their businesses. In particular, I want to thank Chairman Jeff Kirschenbaum, who has really been instrumental, and I think leading the DWC board, and Samantha Horning, who's our executive director, and the whole team that's here with them. So when I was elected, all I heard about was, why aren't we doing what Cranford is doing? All the time. Remember? Well, why aren't we doing what Cranford is doing? Why aren't we doing it's all I heard about. And there was a Spirit of Halloween store in our downtown at the time. And if any of you guys have been to Cranford, you'll notice there are 5- and 6-story buildings in Cranford, and there's a parking garage. And so we are now proposing something that actually is akin to what people were begging for in Cranford, and now everybody's saying, oh, it's too much. And can you name a municipality in the state, I haven't found one yet, of our size that does not have a parking garage for its commuters? I know tons that are smaller than ours. Summit, I think, has 3. Cranford has one, Metuchen has one, Ridgewood has one. They all have commuter. It's ridiculous that we are still using the inefficiency of flat surface parking lots to drive that solution for residents. It's crazy. It actually, only 11% of our residents ask for a parking permit. That means all of us who are non-commuters are subsidizing the lack of benefit that we're not getting from the parking lots. So it's just important how we think about it. Is there a way that we can solve our parking problem and deliver benefits for the entire community? And I do want to say something about Linda's comment about the RFP. She's absolutely right. I just want to be very clear. What Streetworks is buying from us is not the entire South Avenue parking lot. The parking lots are not for sale. A small portion of the parking lot where their buildings sit is what's set for sale. Everything around it, including the parking behind it, everything still belongs to the town. So good luck doing an RFP, selling off 2 little square footprints of the parking lot and telling them that actually residential isn't allowed, because residential is really where they make the money. And on that note, I do find it amusing when they say they weren't listened to. Specifically, the feedback that Streetworks heard from your meeting was that they did not want residential on South Side, flat out, full stop. So it's kind of funny to hear now saying, oh, now with affordable housing, maybe we should be doing residential on the South Side. That is news to all of us. And all I can say, and I'm just going to reiterate what everybody else said. We started 7 years ago to take control of our development because we are tired of these one-off things that were not part of a larger plan. And the ability to take the Lord and Taylor property and marry it with municipal property to put us in the driver's seat of the outcome is exactly what we've been trying to do all along. So are there lots of things that we could point out about this? Yes. I do think that when people focus on the process is a bit cowardly because that's behind us, as opposed to figuring out what it is we need to be doing right now for the community. So clearly, I'm going to support this. I'm disappointed once again that it's going to be on a obviously a partisan vote, but with that.
Mayor, can we continue discussion here, or is it ending?
I think it's ending, and we're taking a vote. So it's, I mean, go for it. It is late, and we still have
It's all right, it's
we still have
it's
a
an
whole
important thing,
agenda
I can
to
stay
go.
here all night. Listen, I think you keep saying this like partisan down party lines, like I made an offer that there's something that's holding me back, and if we're willing to go work with each other, you were so definitive that like, no other person is gonna put an offer. I don't know how you could be so definitive, and if you know that, you're coming off as like you are a real estate expert with a crystal ball that no one here has. You can't be so definitive as you're saying with the RFP. So my ask one more time is if we wanna work together, we wanna work across party lines, we wanna all work together, and you're so disappointed. Sorry, what'd you say?
No, it's fine. It's fine. Go ahead.
I think she said I was so rude or something?
No, go ahead. Continue.
Okay. If we want to work across party lines, like you're saying we should do, and you're so definitively right, why don't you make me eat the cat? And let's put this up for an RFP, and in 3 or 6 months when it's over, if they have the best bid, I will vote for it. That is my offer to every single one of you, if we're willing to just do that RFP, and you might be right, we might get new votes, and I may look like an idiot up here. But that is my offer to all of us to go do it.
Well, appreciate it. It feels a bit gimmicky, and it's also a very long process, and the whole reason that we are combining those parking lots with the Lord and Taylor property is because together they are greater than the individual sum of the parts. So we've spent 3 years plus working on a plan that we're all comfortable with.
No, you guys are comfortable with.
Well,
Don't say we.
Okay. And we're about to take a vote on
But
it.
Councilman, that's not the choice we have tonight.
That's right,
So the
that's
answer
not.
to your question is no, because that's not the choice. I said this, I don't know if you were listening. That's not the choice that we have tonight, all right? I'm sorry, but that's not the choice.
No, we always have a choice. They're at the table negotiating, desperate with no money. What are you
that's not
talking
the
about?
choice in
Okay,
front of
listen, all right, I'm gonna.
It's fine.
I think.
It's gonna go 5-4, like you
So,
said.
okay, so I will, Councilman Contract, please.
I did already.
I forgot we did that, so please call the roll, Ms. Lashy. Councilmembers Hapgood? We did get a second.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Dardian?
Yes.
Domagala?
No.
Kiefer?
No.
Saunders?
No.
Armento?
A less bad project is still a bad project, no.
Contract?
Yes.
Healy? Yes. Mayor Brindle? Yes, and this motion is carried. Does anyone need a break, or should we keep going? Are we good? Keep going? Okay, just want to make sure no one has to take a break. Okay. And listen, if anyone has to get up and leave, we will not be insulted if people are moving. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Town Council Conference?
So moved.
Council Saunders, any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Do we want to just wait?
Opposed? Let's just vote on, it's going to wait. Right. So I take a motion to adjourn? I mean, that's a 5-minute break? What are we doing? Yes, sure. Yeah.
Second.
All in favor, say yes. We had to vote on that. Okay,
Armento.
Paging Dr. Armento. Dr. Armento.
where is he?
Hey, Doc.
Dr. Armento.
Okay.
Doc.
Trying to get back to order. Okay, we are starting on the minutes. And by the way, during the break, I was reminded by our professionals I misspoke about the elimination of the building on the south side. We had made the determination to eliminate the residential component of the south side, but it wasn't necessarily something that we initiated. So just want to be on the record for that. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve the minutes for the Town Council Conference regular meetings of October 22nd, 2024?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Saunders, second. Second by Councilman Hapgood. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
This motion is carried. Now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Anyone may come up to the microphone and speak to the council on any subject on which we have jurisdiction. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please.
So I'm Marvin Gersten. I live at 725 St. Mark's Avenue. I'm probably the only member of the Institute of Transportation Engineers in this room. And last year I had in February 2023, I reviewed all of the past Kimley-Horn reports. So reading the impact of the amended plan, it said that they found a 36 to 40% south side traffic impact reduction. So my question was that based on a new Kimley-Horn traffic impact study? So I wanted to find out, and I went to the Westfield website, and I looked under the FAQs and the list of reports. What I found was the only FAQ that referred to a traffic study was Kimley's 2022 study. And then the next mention was their February 2023 updated study. So it doesn't look to me like Kimley-Horn has done a revised traffic study based on the amended plan, but I'm asking the question, have they? And was that the basis of this 36 to 40% south side traffic reduction, traffic impact reduction? That's one question. The other question is, since there's a reduction in development size, is there going to be a reduction in the proposed traffic mitigation projects as part of the amended plan? That's the third question. Fourth question is, in February 2023, I spoke to the council and I expressed my concern about the parking garage on the north side at North Avenue and Central, because the driveway, which was a eastbound right turn in, right turn out driveway, was 50 feet from the stop line at the intersection of North Avenue and Central. Now, New Jersey Administrative Code 16:47-38 says, and I'm quoting, "The corner clearance distance shall be as follows: a minimum of 100 feet, 30.5 meters for all driveways in the vicinity of signalized intersections." So that proposed eastbound right turn in, right turn out driveway would be closer to the intersection than the existing Verizon store driveway. It's very close, but it's 50 feet shorter than New Jersey code. So my question is, has this proposed driveway location for that proposed parking garage on Route New Jersey 28, North Avenue, has it been approved by New Jersey DOT? And then finally, could any money saved by the amended plan be used to build a pedestrian overpass from the proposed North Avenue parking garage upper level to the eastbound platform of the Westfield train station? I commuted from the north side of town to the Westfield train station for about 50 years, and we always parked on the south side, asking north side residents who are commuters to drive to that parking garage, go up to the top floor, come all the way down, walk all the way through, and go through the tunnel and come up. It's pretty, they're going to miss some trains doing that. So those are my questions and comments. Thank you.
Let me just try. So is Don still here? Oh, Don, I say your name and you appear, but you didn't hear the question. So, and I'll try to answer them, but I might not get them right. Mr. Gersten was asking about, is there a new traffic impact study on the amended plan, and how do we come up with the 36 to 40% reduction? It's my understanding, I'll say this and you correct me if I get it wrong, is that that reduction was made to be commensurate with the reduction in trip generation from the elimination of the one office building. But I think there's a follow-up. Did I get that right?
No, that's my understanding, what you just said.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know that there's more to it.
Which was confirmed. So it's
I'm sorry, we have all people with different pieces of information.
Yes.
And that reduction, at this point, the TIS is still being finalized, but that reduction has been confirmed by our consultant WSP of 36 to 40%.
okay, so and then Jim, don't go away yet. So you asked, no, in spite of the reduction in traffic, one of the things we insisted upon is that all the traffic mitigation measures remain. So there's no reduction in traffic mitigation as part of the reduction in amendments. And you're absolutely right, the DOT does, it is required for the north garage. I don't remember where that is.
Yeah, so the driveway right now actually is 95 feet from the intersection, not 50. Still doesn't meet the 100%, 100 feet requirement. Right now, the design that is not finalized, but the designs call for a right-in only. So there is no right turn out, and the deck design calls for egress out of the deck along the back of the parking lot, which does not change. That goes behind the buildings, and our parking consultant has been looking at a design for an egress on Central Avenue, which the county is looking at as well.
Right turn only, right?
Right turn only, yes. And the last thing about pedestrian bridge, while there was initial looks at pedestrian bridge over the line, actually there was some discussion of beautifying the underpass tunnel, but there has been some discussion about a pedestrian bridge over, not the same place Mr. Gersten's talking about, but a pedestrian bridge from what's now the Lord and Taylor property over the traffic circle area, not on the other side, on the Lord and Taylor side of that, to get pedestrians from the new development to the north side train station there. We've been talking to Streetworks about that for many, many years, about a grant opportunity there as well.
But were you talking about an over the track?
Yes.
So over the track? We had talked to New Jersey Transit about an over the track option, and it just wasn't doable. But the one thing that the one thing that was discussed was creating an element that you could go directly from the garage to the platform, and so you could walk, if you're coming out, you could go right into the garage. So, but you know New Jersey Transit well, so.
There is one in Fanwood.
So, yeah, I can promise you it's been reviewed because we all thought it was a great idea. So, thank you for your comments. Yes.
Melissa Rogers, 1415 Boynton Avenue. I've lived here for 23 years, and I've had 3 daughters in the education system, and I support the Westfield One Place project. Why? First of all, parking lots are ugly, and they don't pay taxes. And the impermeable surface thing is a big deal. We need to worry about that. Our grown children and our senior citizens need the affordable housing in our community. I'm proud that we are one of the few towns in Union County that met the targets required by the state. Cranford has both old and new apartment buildings. The residents in these apartment buildings are supporting a thriving downtown. Fourth, a 25% reduction in size is a huge concession to years of public comment. In my opinion, it's time to stop delaying and go forward. I ask my specific representatives, Mr. Domagala and Mr. Contract, and all the rest of you, please approve I wanted you to approve the amendment. I didn't understand how the process works. Just keep it going forward. Please facilitate this. Just get it done. I mean, after all this time, it's time. Just do it.
Thank you.
Mary Ellen O'Boyle, 678 Shadowlawn Drive. I'm not here longer than Mr. Healy, but I've been in Westfield for 47 years. Same house. And for many, many years, the south side was considered the wrong side of the tracks. And that's sort of dissipated pretty much over the last 10 years with all the new construction that's gone on on the south side. But now I feel as if we're being second citizens again with a huge parking garage and a commercial building. I just feel like it's ugly, and what's going to attract people to the south side shopping? Nothing. Nothing. I don't know, it just seems to be ugly. And it doesn't seem to be, the comparison to what the north side train station is going to look like to the south side is night and day, and I think it's not fair to the south side. We've been abused for many, many years.
Thank you, Marilyn. Also, thank you for your advocacy for trains, because she was one of the early Raritan Valley Line. And I'll just say, I appreciate your perspective, but I couldn't disagree more, because there is currently no green space on the south side. It's an asphalt parking lot. The south side, we are insistent on getting a beautiful pedestrian plaza that would be the equivalent of the north side. The whole intention is to make sure that there's some equivalency. You talk about the garage, but it's all going to be lined with retail, and the issue what they call camouflage, exactly. And the issue with the problem on the south side with the businesses, and you can talk to the business owners on South Avenue, they call it a desert. When people want to shop, they want to see activation on both sides of the street. It's well documented that when you have one side that's just flat, in this case an asphalt parking lot, that's not an environment where people want to go and pedestrians want to stroll. So when you're talking about a building and a garage lined with retail with beautiful wide sidewalks and trees and a 40-foot wide oasis, if you will, between the two buildings, that's going to be amazing for South Side residents. Not to mention a big priority was creating better connections between the north and south side. So right now, nobody really wants to walk through an asphalt parking lot. But now there'll be something that really enhances the experience that make people want to be there. Streetworks is committed to putting their liquor license on the south side, which can activate several restaurants within their own office building. There currently is no liquor license within the central business district on the south side. So I couldn't disagree more with your assessment. If anything, we were so adamant about ensuring that the south side would finally be able to get the love and investment that the north side has enjoyed for a long time.
I hope this
Yes, and I think that's what we'll see. We're committed to that. So.
Hello again. Morgan O'Brien, 438 St. Mark's Avenue in Westfield. I guess I just make a request on the numbers that people refrain from talking about the $153 million, because that's a marketing number. That's not a real financial number. That's over 30 years. So in year 30, $1 million is worth $1.98. So it's not, while it can support the debt, I'll agree with that. That's very good. That's excellent. All right, supporting of the debt funding, but it's not a real number, because anything past 10 is very subject to a lot of things going on. And as we heard here, Hudson Bay went private back in 2020. All right, so you can't see their numbers, but anyone can sort of find out, okay, what are the retail properties they own? How are they doing? How are they doing versus Amazon? They're probably hurting if at a certain point in time, those businesses represent 50–60% of the revenue. Guess what? They're in trouble. So, worth thinking about, all right? But, okay. And then, to mention Michael Dardia, to mention big box going in there, also, that doesn't follow. There's no big boxes that are building, brick and mortar. That doesn't exist anymore. Walmart's whole strategy is to compete against Amazon. They're not building brick and mortar in these areas. It's just not happening. You can look it up, all right? So there are risks. The $153 million is not guaranteed, all right? There's no guarantees, but it would be better not to market the 153 million. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Michael Blancato, 18 Carroll Road. The amount that he just said about the pilot payment in lieu of other taxes is a negotiated settlement. And I heard Linda say, Councilman Hopgood, a million times talk about the 157 million. I've done an analysis. If we turned the townhouses and development and we did appraisals based on today's real estate market, we would do better without a pilot, just based on my calculations of assessed values in the town. So start there. Then the south side that we talk about. I'm in favor of the garage. I was in favor of the garage I've lived in Westfield my whole life. So based on everybody here, I think I might even have you, Mr. Healy, beat, because I'm here 62 years. Okay, close though. I'm here 62 years, my whole life. So I was 100% for the garage. I was 100% for ShopRite going into Westfield. So it's not that I'm against development. I'm for a garage on the south side, as long as it's done correctly. My whole issue is, and my phone unfortunately just died and I had this statistic, is there's places right now that have commercial development that over the last 5 years have had to take that commercial development, went back to their towns or cities and said, you know what, this commercial development's not working out anymore. So we gotta turn it into residential. We're gonna have a lead balloon there because of the fact we've decided to go down this path. And I know you guys voted for the amendment tonight, but just like the last time, I really thought there needed to be more due diligence looked into about the commercial on the south side, about the parking spaces on the south side. And I own a house on the south side. Every single day, where my house is, people park there. It's supposed to be 2-hour parking. The reason why, they either couldn't get a spot in the train station or they didn't even apply for the permit, and they parked there. I'm not gonna call and get it enforced because they're residents of the town. Most of them are gonna be residents. As a matter of fact, I know a couple of them that live on the south side that park in front of my house on there. My point being is that I think there needs to be more due diligence here. I like the RFP idea. I liked it the last time when we talked about it. It felt like we're giving Hudson Bay everything that they've asked for, and in this amendment, they came around, and I didn't have a lot of time to read the redacted piece, not redacted, the red line pieces of the proposal, but it just feels like, once again, we're flying through this process. The last point I wanted to make, and David, I talked to you about this the last time, the parking lot for the YMCA, where the townhouses, there's 14 of them now instead of 16, there needed to be a negotiation with the Y, because they are being used. And what you told me back then was, oh, that's locked every day. Well, I still drive by there, and that parking lot's half full. So when those townhouses get built there, what are we gonna do with the parking? And I heard the people talking about the streets that are next to Clark Street and stuff like that. I'm one of those people that does everything I can when I'm coming down Clark Street from work. I avoid turning that way to get into the center of town. So there's a lot that needs to be done, a lot of unanswered questions, and I heard what the partisan lines are. I don't think they're partisan lines. I think one side thinks that it's development at all costs. I think the other side's saying, wait a second, let's slow down and think about this just a little bit. I wish the amendment hadn't gone through tonight, because I wish there was more time for dialogue back and forth. I've said that from the beginning, and the pizza run didn't happen this year. I didn't realize I put this on because I went for a run tonight and I had this on. Unfortunately, it's not sweaty now, but it was before, from 2012. The town's a great town, and what worries me is once something like this is done, it's gonna be too big. I think the parking garage is really, really needed, because I agree with you 100% about the desert on the south side. I grew up on the south side. I grew up a block and a half from there when there was Roots there, when there was Duke's there. All those great stores, they're gone. But now they've been replaced with some cool places too. The Acting Out, Victoria's, I forget the name of the French cafe.
Victoria's Cakes, Roberta, the faux place, exactly.
There's a new little Spanish type market there. Excellent. So it's coming around.
And by the way, they're coming around, because I speak to them all the time, because of the apartments that are there that are driving foot traffic to the stores, just so you know.
I don't disagree with, so you're not hearing me disagree with those kind of development. I'm not.
I'm actually said that for the benefit of everybody else, so.
So I'm not disagreeing with that kind of development. What I am disagreeing with, I was worried really about the queuing on South Avenue. We talked about that. I'm worried about the parking situation by Clark Street, where the YMCA people overflow goes, because I used to go to the Y, I don't anymore, but I used to go all the time. So those are the things that I'm over my time.
All right, you are out of time. Let me just say one thing, because I heard you say you're worried about the commercial and they're not going to get it, it might turn into residential. Okay, so we have protections for that. They can't do that. They can't do that without getting council approval. And the other thing that's new in this amendment that wasn't before, we increase the requirement for tenancy before they can even break ground. So before they can break ground on that commercial office, they have to have 75% of that office leased. Or else they can't do it. And so we built in those protections. That's one that we got better this time than we did the first one for the same reassurance. But the beauty is the way the deal is structured in terms of the timing. Let's just say they can't get to tenancy, right? That comes after all these other public improvements have been built. So that, including the south side, because what we were worried about, let's just say that came to fruition. The old plan didn't allow the south side to have any benefits if that happened. We've now accelerated, so for whatever reason, if that didn't happen, there would be a beautiful public plaza, lots of streetscape improvements, so the south side is going to benefit regardless.
Good.
So.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Brindle, members of the council. Sharon Stockwell, 100 Nelson Place. I'm very happy that you passed the amendment tonight. Thank you very much for doing that. As a 23-year resident of Ward 1, District 1, I live right there in that particular neighborhood at the Y. I'm sorry that some of my neighbors have left early because I really did want to speak to them. But I am very supportive of this project. I was supportive of the very first project, and I'm very supportive of this one as well. Although I will miss some of the elements of the larger project, I do think that this is a very good project. One of the things that I like about this is that this whole area is looked at in a macro way. In the past, all of the different projects and any of the other proposed projects or businesses that have been proposed in the Ward 1, District 1 area have always been kind of piecemeal. Everything's always been individualized. Nothing was ever connected as a whole. One of the things that I know that Linda and I've been talking about over the last 7 years was some kind of a comprehensive traffic road calming kind of techniques, because we have had problems in the past with speeding and with the traffic backups and everything. So I'm very happy to know that we're using smart technology to be able to integrate that into everything. I think it'll be an improvement. The other thing that I wanted to bring up to the for new council members is, are you familiar with and have you ever visited Blueback Square, which is up in Hartford, Connecticut? That is the other project that is very similar to this one, Westfield Place. My family lives next door in Farmington, Connecticut. So,
and that was a Streetworks project.
That is a Streetworks project. And so they're around the corner from Blueback Square. So this is an area that I know, that I have been to, and that I have frequented quite a bit with them. I have a sister-in-law that has a sister that recently moved, and she purchased a house right near Blueback Square because she wanted to be able to walk and not take her car. So if any of you have had the opportunity to go and see it, I really think you should. Or if you want to Google it and take a look at it online, I really think you should take a look at it. It is a very similar project to what we're talking about here, and it is beautifully done. And in fact, I'm a little bit jealous because one of the things that they have in their project that we don't have is they have a grocery store in their project. And there would be nothing more than I would like to see than a new grocery store or something to replace Stop and Shop, because that is quite an eyesore. And I am right there on the next block, and that is something that is just going from bad to worse. So, you know, I think that this is a great opportunity, and I also think it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I imagine that there are other towns in this area that would have jumped at the opportunity to have someone come to them and say, I want to partner with you. I want to bring this to your town. I want to work with you on developing, you know, your public spaces, our properties, and to integrate this as a whole. Because when you do that, then you're able to get more done rather than just do things one at a time piecemeal. So thank you again for passing it tonight.
John Marcos, 543 Arlington Avenue. I would say that the commuters and their families continue to be major losers under OWP plans. The garage spaces are less convenient, more time-consuming, less safe, more expensive for commuters, more costly for the town, and less suburban. They claim that it's a one-for-one parking replacement, but that's misleading, because garage spaces, shared spaces, and distance spaces are lower quality than the current surface parking spaces. And there's a very long waiting list. How many suburban towns are giving up their suburban surface parking? The number of spaces is inadequate for current needs and grossly inadequate for future needs. The proposed traffic patterns for the plazas and the garages and the main streets are inadequate and unsafe for commuter drivers, other drivers, and pedestrians. All of those cars are being funneled into two small areas. Pedestrian walkways have been reduced and are inadequate. Town has the obligation to avoid creating dangerous conditions and to avoid creating liability issues. The town plans have reduced waiting areas for cars and for pedestrians. And there are fewer entrances and exits for both commuter cars and shopping cars. And I would add finally that I would say that most residents and merchants and visitors do not want to give up the convenient North Plaza surface lot spaces. And they don't want to give up the historic Christmas tree, which is important for the town. Anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you. I didn't quite understand why you said parking wasn't going to be replaced fully when it absolutely is going to be replaced one-to-one. And just let me give you a few data points on the parking with the train. So we monitor our parking regularly, and I get regular information from New Jersey Transit, and I've now asked them to break it out for me by day. Even during today, just a couple weeks ago, even during Wednesday, which is the peak commuting time from Westfield, boardings on Wednesdays are down 20 to 40% at the peak time pre-COVID. And so there's a reason why our lots look full on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They are not full on Monday and Friday. They're not full 4 days of the week, and the Watterson lot is never full. So what you're finding is our largest town asset, which is our parking lots, are completely underutilized in terms of delivering benefits to taxpayers. So I would say by actually replacing the commuter parking one-to-one, when boardings are down 20 to 40% today than they were pre-COVID, we are de facto increasing capacity. The opportunity is in terms of how we need to be smarter about how we allocate it. We need to look at maybe doing dynamic pricing for dailies. There's lots of things that we need to do to make sure that our current spaces, whether it's a flat lot or a garage, are better and more effectively utilized that could benefit more commuters. But I don't agree with you that there's actually, we need more commuter parking. I think we need to be more efficient about how we're allocating our commuter parking based upon ridership trends today. Now, Well, and I don't usually take comments from the back, but the waiting list is also something that has to be revisited based upon current trends. And I think one of the things this council did recently was invested in parking technology to allow people to buy online, to invest in better tracking. Those types of things are going to help us in terms of better manage a parking system that will be better, that will be more efficient and better, more access for everyone. So, and hopefully should reduce the list too. I mean, honestly, the Watterson lot, never full, ever. And so that's crazy that we have a lot like that in that adjacency and it's empty most of the time. So, yeah, okay. people park there before COVID and people buy parking passes, permits there. So, okay, so, all right, I'm sorry, who was next? So, all right.
Okay, Denise Sherwood, 642 Hanford Place. A year and a half ago, week after week, residents came to this podium and raised very important and valid concerns about the assumptions and lack of data to support One Westfield Place. Parking analysis, traffic analysis, demand for office space in Westfield, occupancy and lease rates, revenue, and pilot distributions. They were mocked, condescended, and ignored. Here we are 18 months later, and the entire south side parking lot portion is being modified by the developers with reduced office space and an above-ground parking garage. What's not clear to me today, this is the question I wasn't allowed to ask before, it came up in the meeting that there was an April meeting, and then somehow I think they came back to you in June, and topology and lots of conversations went on. And it was said that what was driving it was that you have a tenant. So that's what's pushing this so fast. You have a tenant, and that's for the Lord and Taylor spot, right? The tenant, that's, oh, you can't answer it yet. Okay, it seems like there's some tenant that's coming. I'm assuming it's the urgent care tenant that's going in the Lord and Taylor building. So what in the world does that have to do with the south side lot? You're talking about one tenant for North Avenue. Why did the plan change and why did they reduce the scope of the project for South Ave? It seems to me they're probably in financial trouble. They can't get a commercial tenant and they couldn't get a tenant to fill 2 commercial buildings. It had nothing to do with us because they would have listened to the residents a year and a half ago. So something changed with their financials that they're reducing the scope on South Avenue. A second thing is, it seems that we really don't have a plan about what we want. On the south side, Councilwoman Hapgood, you had said, are we going to get more occupants other than food? Is there going to be anything other than food? And the man got up here and said, yes, we have 10,000 employees in retail, where HBC is aligned with Saks Fifth Avenue. I'm sure we can put in anything other than food. And then Mayor Brindle, you said, wait, we have the liquor license is now going to the south side lot. And the beauty of it is, with one license, we could have 3 restaurants and bars. As long as they're adjacent, it can be on one license. So I'm like, okay, do we want non-food or do we want food, you know, in bars? So, well, which is it? So I'm questioning on the retail side on South Avenue, just how many stores or businesses can there be if we're looking at 3 bars and restaurants? How much space is that taking up? And we talk about a 48-foot garage on South Avenue, but it's only going to have, if I understand correctly, 1 story, possibly 2 of retail in front of it. So to me, we're still going to be looking at a big, huge garage, and the garage is going to be really long now. The length of the garage is bigger than what would have been the length of the commercial office building. Let's see, what else do I have here? We talk about lowering building heights. However, lowering most building heights by 15 to 30 feet in both Lorne and Taylor and the south side parcels. That still leaves us with 4 out of 5 buildings that are still 55 to 65 feet tall, not including the rooftop mechanicals, which can add another 15 to 20 feet. And as far as parking goes, there's still a waiting list for parking. So if somebody buys a parking ticket, they want to know that, okay, I have, 25 minutes to get from my house to catch the train. They don't want to, on any given day, be looking at some kind of app and saying, well, where's my parking lot going to be? They want to have a parking pass and know that they have a spot. They don't want to, I don't think, go by on a day-to-day basis wondering whether they have a lot. Like, are you going to is your plan to oversell and give everybody, there won't be any waiting list, and we'll just assume that because some days the lot's empty and some days it's not, that they'll have a spot to park? I don't understand that. So, thank you.
Bob McNamara, 603 Lawrence Avenue. I have a couple of comments. The first of which is, as someone had suggested, to go and see West Hartford and that development, go ahead. What you'll see is 3-story residential there. That's what they have. That's what we've always preached should happen in Westfield. The rest of that development, quite frankly, is an outdoor shopping center. I wanted to also address the parking and the parking capacity. Mayor, I can't disagree with you more. We have actually, with the plan, lost 90 spaces. If you look carefully at THA's report that they issued on February 13, 2023, in it, it has as primary strategies that they're counting 30 spaces behind Barron's. They already exist. They're also counting parking spaces on Orchard and Elm. Those also exist already. And then behind or next to Holy Trinity Church, the Waterston lot, again, that's 25 spaces that already exist. So I disagree with you. The new plan is short by 90 spaces. You can't count existing spaces and say that's part of your primary strategy. And lastly, from the town's own website, a master plan governs and dictates zoning. From Mr. Tremliak, who's the planning board attorney, seconded by Chair Michael Ash, actually stated prior to a vote last week that the master plan is not zoning. I think a town attorney who doesn't know what our master plan is shouldn't represent us. And I think it's an embarrassment that he would state that before a vote when it's absolutely incorrect.
So you're going to reset the clock? Or I'll take, Thank you. Carla Bonacci, 603 Lawrence Avenue, representing Westfield Advocates. We will reiterate our previous remarks to the council at first reading 2 weeks ago and to the planning board just last week. The amended Lord and Taylor train station redevelopment plan, aka 1 Westfield Place project, and its impacts are inconsistent with the holistic community vision, goals and objectives articulated in the town master plan, and the amended OWP plan still does not sufficiently mitigate the major neighborhood impacts, including traffic volumes, building massing, and neighborhood character. The amended plan has a substantive additional impacts that are worse than the original OWP plan. 1, greater building massing above grade with consequential reduction of open space. 2, there are now 3 new parking garages above grade for commercial tenants, essentially due to the elimination of below grade parking. That makes 5 above-grade parking garages, along with the previous 2 commuter parking garages. Unbelievable. These changes cannot be reasonably dismissed as insignificant impacts to the community. The council shouldn't have advanced this vote on the amended redevelopment plan. There hasn't been a reasonable opportunity to fully and fairly review the plan or its potential community and financial impacts, although some of you seem to know quite a lot about the financial impacts that the rest of us don't seem to know about. And you should have done all this pursuant to the redevelopment law. Westfield advocates provided a 43-page memo to the planning board last week outlining how the amended OWP plan has potentially greater impacts and also still remains inconsistent with the goals and objectives of the baseline 2019 master plan. Whatever other differences of opinion regarding this OWP development, I'm sure the prospect of 3 new above-grade parking garages, each up to about 48 feet tall, was not substantively raised, explored, documented for community input as part of the town's master plan. The town's train station public lots, approximately 7 acres of land, are probably the town's most significant asset. To essentially back into an overall program that fits with HBC's latest developer pro forma is not a reasonable choice in the best interest of Westfield. We rhetorically ask again, who from the general community actually asked for a development of this scale, 14 acres of mixed-use development, half of which sits on fully utilized, revenue-producing public property, even though you discount the 11% of us who moved here because we could commute to New York City. We have not even addressed what happens when the developer's pro formas continue to change as actual design, construction, and leasing sales begin, or even as development rights might even be transferred. The town does not need to unnecessarily take on development risks and be at the developer's mercy to acquiesce with future amendments. To be sure, Westfield Advocates is primarily concerned with the town's and this council's choices for publicly owned train station lots. I'm going to run out of time. We do believe that we should be addressing infrastructure issues and needs and then attracting the types of development, uses, massing, aesthetic quality that fits in well with Westfield's decidedly residential suburban character. We should look at benchmarks like Cranford, Summit, Darien, Madison, Fairfield, Connecticut that preserve their downtowns rather than destroy them with supersized buildings, functionally deficient infrastructure, and ruin the quality of their neighborhoods. I will say, since you voted, that we have shared with you our reply brief that's filed with the Superior Court and the Appellate Division. We are serious about this lawsuit. It describes the legal grounds for opposing the first plan, the revised plan, and both plans fail to meet the legal requirements of New Jersey statutes that apply to create a valid redevelopment plan. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, I close this portion of the meeting and move to bills and claims. Councilman Hapgood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move bills and claims in 540. My mic on, sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move bills and claims in the amount of $546,378.73.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Dardia. All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. Next on the agenda is reports of standing committees, beginning with the Finance Policy Committee. Councilman Hapgood.
Thank you again, Mayor. I have 9 resolutions, 8 of which I'd like to move as a package. The first, a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund Recreation Department fees. The second, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for dog licenses for October 2024. Third, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for the Board of Adjustment escrow monies. 4, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for overpaid taxes for 2024. 5, a resolution authorizing the assignment of a municipal lien. 6, a resolution to approve insertion of special item of revenue in the municipal budget for the receipt of a 2024 Greening Union County grant. And 7, a resolution to approve insertion of a special item of revenue in the municipal budget for the 2024 Kids Recreation Memorial Park Tennis Courts Grant.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Contract. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried.
And I'd also like to move a resolution authorizing the CFO to make a budget transfer.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Armento. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Tardia,
Yes.
Domagala,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armento, Contract, Healy,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. Next is Public Safety Transportation Parking Committee. Councilman Dardia.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move General Ordinance number 2024-25 on first reading, an ordinance to amend the Code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 13.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Contract. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Tardia,
Yes.
Domagala,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armento,
Yes.
Contract,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. Next is Public Works Committee. Councilman Healy.
I'd like to move 3 resolutions as a package. One, a change order for, and final payment for Summit Avenue and Elmer Street, a change order for authorizing various street improvements and a final payment, and a resolution to submit an award extension pertaining to Clover Street and Francis Terrace improvements to the New Jersey DOT.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Domagala. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion.
So moved. Second, we go to Councilman Hapgood. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? This motion carried. This meeting is adjourned. Good night, everybody.